This episode brought to you by Max Belts. Guys, are you looking for a perfect accessory to wear every single day for every single scenario? Well, you've come to the right place. We all know that nothing stands up to wear and tear like a good leather belt. If you're looking for the toughest leather belt on earth, then you've come to the right place. Max Belts. They're handcrafted in the USA by veterans who are serious about their craft. And if you're looking for a belt that's tough enough for your active lifestyle and help support those who've given so much to our country, look no further than Max Belts. It's the toughest belt on the planet. It's a perfect solution for casual or dress wear and ideal for utility and firearm carry. It's the highest caliber of American craftsmanship, and it also positively impacts our military charity partners. Once again, Max Belts, you can't go wrong with them. I wear them every day. They're the toughest belt on earth. And you can find all of this and so much more at maxbelts.com. In 3, 2, 1, and we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another electrifying episode of the DTD podcast. This week in the studio, we're diving into the mind and experience of a true legend. A man whose career reads like an action-packed thriller, a retired command sergeant major with over 30 years of unmatched experience in the U.S. Army Special Operations and Special Forces. This isn't just any soldier. He was one of the youngest ever to conquer the grueling Special Forces assessment and selection, and from there, his journey only intensified. Before 9/11, he was already making waves, attending the Elite Special Forces Underwater Operations course, completing the U.S. Army Ranger School, and executing high-stakes missions across Central and South America. He served directly under the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and at the Pentagon worked with JSOC, and even spent time as a guest ranger instructor. But that's just the beginning. He's held every critical position you can imagine, from junior and senior weapons sergeant, team sergeant, battalion command sergeant major, to leading operations in Iraq and Syria as the senior enlisted leader of the Special Operations Joint Task Force. He played a pivotal role in missions that took down over 270 ISIS leaders, financiers, and facilitators. Oh, and did we mention he was in the thick of the U.S. Embassy Baghdad attack, ensuring the safe exfil of the U.S. ambassador and eliminating threats, including an Iranian general during the ballistic missile attacks. This man's resume is pure adrenaline, but now he's on a different mission, one that's just as intense and focused, but a little closer to home. Post-retirement, he's embracing fatherhood, he took a swing at local politics, and is on a relentless quest to craft the perfect Mezcal. It's not just any Mezcal. Buckle up, because today's episode is going to be an unfiltered, no-holds-barred conversation with a man who's seen it all, done it all, and is now taking on life with the same warrior spirit that defined his military career. This is Sean Keane's journey, and you don't want to miss it. What's going on, my friend?
Thanks, brother. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, well, I want to get into this with you. You have one of the most fascinating careers I've ever seen. Starting out pre-9/11 in the 90s, and you were doing stuff all over the world before operations were really even kind of talked about. And I think you understand what I mean. After 9/11 happened, the world kind of focused and saw terrorism as a huge thing, but you were working on counter-drug operations, international criminal networks, all of that kind of stuff before it was ever even kind of a quote-unquote sexy thing. But I want to go all the way back to your childhood, because I think you come from a family that kind of bred this into you. You have a long history in your family, and I want to talk about it. Let's start out first talking about your father. Now, he retired as a colonel 4 years after you joined the military. Can we talk a little bit about him and the influences that he had on you coming into this world?
Yeah, sure, man. I love to talk about my family, man. My dad's story is much greater than my story. Especially in that time and age, my mom and dad were both born in Limerick City, Ireland, and lived that life out there. And my father, he left school when he was 14 years old to work in the mills. It's kind of a standard thing in Ireland. They did that, so you work out, you start working money, put money in the family kind of piece. So he bounced around Ireland, and he did a little time in England. And then about 17 years old, he made his way to America and landed in New York City. And it was kind of interesting. Mentioned before, one of the key things I've always felt interesting when he tells me the stories. Let's say he landed on Friday and Sunday when he went to Mass, was when he went to Catholic Mass, there was a line of Irishmen all lined up outside, And he walked up and he shook each one of their hands, and each one of them gave him a little bit of money. And he said, "Welcome to America," on his American journey, and to help him out. And I thought that was amazing when I was telling those stories. And living that life as a 17-year-old, you left everything to venture off in the world. With the only thing you have is in your pocket. You got credit cards. You ain't got nobody to, you got no safety nets. You are literally just on an adventure. To see what happens. No high school diploma, nothing like that.
Well, kind of my question to you would be, because he was around in kind of a violent time. When you talk about him before he came over here, he was in a violent time in Europe in general, and terrorist attacks that were going on there. Did that have any kind of effect on him before he came over here? And then after he came here joining the military, did thoughts of that kind of creep into him?
Sure, a little bit, but you got to think about a lot of stuff in Northern Ireland didn't happen until after he left, pretty much. So he left. He came here in the 50s, and that was really kicking off in that 60s and 70s kind of time period. Even though you had a lot of IRA stuff earlier in the days, they were kind of a piece of that. But he didn't feel a whole lot of that. He's got stories of the IRA because a lot of my family was in the IRA back in the early days. In fact, I've got it's not here actually. You got two medals from the IRA from my grandparents, my great grandparents, when it was actually an army. It wasn't a terrorist organization at that point in life. They're actually fighting the British Army at that point in Southern Ireland, stuff like that. So it's interesting that he tells me those stories about my uncles and my my grandfathers, some of that, his great uncles and grandfathers. So yeah, turbulent times, but you haven't really talked too much about that because you got to think about a lot of that was, again, after he got to America, a lot of that stuff happening in Northern Ireland was with the terrorist organizations at the IRA at the time that was going on when he was here.
Well, I'm almost wondering, though, what was it that pushed him here? Because, like you said, he came here without really a complete education. What was it that made him go, yeah, this is the country that I want to serve? Because he served it forever. What was it that was about this place that made him go, this is what I want to do for my life here?
I can tell you what's interesting. I can tell you why. Because in that time period, America was that shining light. It was that great place to be. He used to tell me, he goes, anytime you could get an American tool, like a craftsman tool in Ireland, that was gold. To get any kind of American tool back in those days, gold. And nowadays, you don't see that much, when it comes to American tools like that. It's all changed over there considerably. So in his perspective, when he looked at America, that was a place to go, to go make your path, to have that American dream. You always heard about that American dream, and you felt, hey, that's the only place I need to go and check it out.
Well, with your mother coming over here too, anything about her history of it coming over here and kind of being the spouse of a guy that traveled around and was in the military?
So it's kind of interesting with the mom. He didn't talk to her for like 4 or 5 years. When he came over to the States, he joined the Air Force at first, did like 2 years in the Air Force, got his high school diploma through the Air Force, and then got out for a little bit and then joined the Army. And he was stationed in Okanaga. When he was stationed in Okanaga is when he pushed back over to Ireland to find my mom and asked her to marry. And then he took her from Limerick City, Ireland to Okanaga. What a dramatic change in atmosphere. But again, when you listen to their stories at that young of an age, bouncing around the world and, I'm just living off a dime and a penny. But you know what? Every moment was glorious to them. It was joyful. They found fun in everything they did. They didn't have a pile of money. They found fun in everything they did, in Okinawa and stuff like that, Later on, my dad, he would tell me that they did I can't remember what year it was. So he was in the airborne infantry out in Okinawa. They did all the jumps out there and then do a lot of water jumps and so forth. But they did before the Vietnam War kicked off, they did a show of force in the Cambodia element. So before the Vietnam War really kicked off for the U.S. piece. I don't have the details on that. He kind of tells me the stories about it a little bit. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So they jumped in, did their thing, and they pulled them out kind of thing. So obviously it didn't work.
Well, I guess you could say it didn't work until it did work with the MACV-SAW guys over there and doing that. So, he took the first brunt of that, which is pretty amazing. What I would like to ask you about with him growing up and him coming from, very a small background, but becoming such a large figure, what do you remember about his personality growing up? Was he stern? Was he that guy that you see in the movies that's the officer and all that kind of stuff? Or how do you remember him as a kid?
I can tell you there's one thing about the Irish, especially Irish men. They'll never tell you they love you, but you know they love you. You know, never ever heard my dad say, "I love you, Sean," kind of thing. Never. You know, but you know he loves you, kind of piece. You know, your mom tells you all the time, but never your dad. It's an Irish way. It's like he'll never ask for help. Like for instance, he has neighbors next door that he can ask for help to drive to the airport, but he won't ask them. He'll call me and I'm 2.5 hours away and I go drive to the airport. My dad, just ask your neighbor, man. He won't do that. You know, it's that way. But he was never in a way where it was a discipline. It was really pretty much everything he did was watch me do it and learn how I do it kind of piece. And that's one thing I loved about growing up with him was that he would do things that he had never done before just to go do it. You know, always wanted to go to Montana, so we got stationed in Montana. Always wanted to go hunting, you know, deer and elk and antelope, and learned out there to hunt kind of piece. You know, always wanted to sail. Bought a 30-foot sailboat, sunk the first one, got a second sailboat. You know? But they were never afraid. I think I was just, maybe that's a time period in life, but they were never afraid to take chances and risks, you know, not to be afraid of anything like that, you know. And that's why I watched my dad do all that. He was never afraid to try to build a house. Never built a house before, and try to build a house and do all that kind of stuff. He would figure it out as he went along the way.
Yeah, but don't you think that went forward to you? I mean, one of the youngest guys to ever go through the pipeline, Ranger school, jump school, dive school, became a intricate operations portion of the dive program. That sounds just like you, not being afraid to just go out and do whatever.
You're right, but I think we're all in that position in life, is that you can't let fear, you know, steer your ship. You know, you gotta move forward with it, you know, and take advantage of it and move forward, and not be afraid of things. It's up to you to set conditions. So it's like, for instance, any school you go to, you can set the conditions and train to a certain portion, right? And you're gonna have that 80% train up to it, but is that 20% unknown? That's 20% unknown is really determines the individuals who move forward, who don't move forward, how you handle that 20%, you know, and not being afraid of it, you know, because we let fear just take us over. It's like, man, you got to push it aside and just go try things out and see how you do, as long as you prepare yourself. That's the key thing.
Okay, so let me ask you something. You said that he never told you he loved you. But when you did all this and you go through the military, because we'll get into your brother in a minute, who was also in the military and an officer, when you do all this, does he ever tell you he's proud of you? Do you know that he's proud of you? I would like to hear how that happens.
He always told me every time I told him I was going to do something, he goes, "Don't do that." It was actually the opposite. Sean, don't go to Ranger school. But it always seemed to me that every time I made it through something, it was weird. It was like, "Hey, Dad, I made it through." You're like, "Really? You made it through?"
Thanks for believing in me. So it's a lot of fond memories. Do you think that's what pushed you towards going in the military, of him and seeing what he did? And then, like I said, I know your brother was an officer, flew Apaches. Is that just kind of the instinct that grew up in that house?
I think it was, you know, and it's kind of interesting. I see a lot of people that I know these days have older kids now that are out of high school that were, you know, they're 20 years in the military, and their kids don't go in the military, you know. So I'm not sure what happened in that gap, you know, of maybe they separated themselves so much that the kids didn't even see that kind of stuff, I guess, or maybe they didn't while they were living with them. So I have the one thing I really have right now with my son. He's 9, but he was 6 when I retired. So he didn't really see any of that lifestyle really come to. He caught his last 6 years, but his first 6 years, you know, or man, what are you seeing that much, you know?
Right.
See that stuff as much, you know? He sees Sean long hair, you know, Super Sean kind of thing, you know. And he knows walking in the bar down here, you can see, you know, stuff I have hanging on the walls, but that's a whole different life that he doesn't really know or will follow through. We'll see. But yeah, I think it was an influence watching my dad being on military bases growing up, that eventually he never really even pushed me to go do it. It was just one of those things that, you know, well, I should probably do this, you know, probably get a college degree, at least I have some funding here and there kind of thing. And like originally, you know, I know you talked with Brent Tucker a while back. He's an ADA guy. Originally, I was going to go ADA. I was lined up to go to the old school, the Hawk missile system. You know, it's an ADA system. And then my dad introduced me to two guys that would become huge mentors in my life, Scotty and Ray. And they were 2 Green Berets, SF Ranger combat divers. And when I met these guys, I had never in my life met anybody so competent and confident and just good at everything they did. And I was like, man, I want to be like those guys. How do I be like those guys?
Did you see like a little aura around them?
Yeah, it was just, and they weren't cocky or anything about it, man. You just how they moved, the swagger about them, and what they did, everything they did. I was like, man, these guys are just excellent thing to do. How do I be like that, guys? And that piece.
Well, I think you bring up a good point because, being in the military before, then getting out, finish my degree, and then going into law enforcement for the last, almost 20 years. My kids haven't been around the military, but my oldest, who's in college right now, just joined. She joined the National Guard. And I think it's for kind of the same reasons that you did. You had to figure out a way to get college paid for. You had to figure out kind of how you were going to stand as an adult and stuff. And she just joined, got into aviation and stuff. So I think, though, the point that you bring up that a lot of people don't do that, I think that that's gone in society right now. There's not a lot of people going into first responders, law enforcement, military, firefighters, anything like that anymore, because I think that it's not really at the forefront of anyone's mind anymore. And like we talked about, when you were doing, missions before people even knew about that stuff, I think that's where we're back to. The war on terror, according to a lot of government officials and stuff, is quote unquote over. Yeah. And so it's not brought up every day. And I almost worry because I kind of would like your opinion on it. The military's not reaching its recruiting goals. I think the Marine Corps was the only one to hit theirs last year. We're going to put ourselves into a situation where we're coming out of that post-Cold War again, where we're having to get up to speed again to go back into battle.
Yeah. It's interesting when you go to Bragg or any other places out there, we'll call it Bragg, Camp Liberty or Fort Liberty, whatever, is when you go to the location, and we call it six sleeves. So no combat patches. And it's like everybody. And it's so unusual to see that now. So you're used to the last 20 years of war, seeing everybody with combat patches and stuff like that. And now we're about to go back into that generation that doesn't have that movement, and it's going to be interesting to see. And that's hard to, people want to go do the fight. There's certain people who want to go do the fight, and certain people who don't want it. But people who want to go do the fight are starting to realize that the fight may not be there as much anymore. And so they don't have a tendency to want to join the military and back off so forth like that, But I do find it interesting, though, when I go on the Navy base here next to me, it is such a different world from what I knew. Because when I look around, I see that the military has almost become a civilian company. So they're changing their standards to draw people in. I mean, physical standards, all kinds of stuff. I'm just like looking around like this is not the military I used to know kind of piece. And I'm sure everybody before me had the same thing when they looked at us kind of thing too. But I think we've done a dramatic, huge step to separate. The military was there for a reason. It was not as civilians. We had a certain job to do, and everybody had a certain job to do. Not to be a company like Google, so we're going to go ahead and just, hey, we'll open up the standards, let everybody come in. That's not what its job is supposed to be. Our specific job is, national defense and stuff like that. So why are we not sticking to those standards? Because we're not meeting those numbers. And so what do we got to do? Company, well, we change the standards, except for people coming in and so forth. And it's, I don't know. I'm not too happy with it, but it's not my call.
Okay, so when you look at it, though, and you look at, because I think you of all people we could ask about, because you've been all over the world, the threats that we're looking at now, North Korea, Syria, Iran, we're looking at a lot of places that you had been and worked in country and stuff. Are we ready for that next battle?
I don't know. I can tell you right now, we did a huge shift. So when the North Korea thing popped up, how long was that? A decade ago or less than that, probably. When that popped up, we were all pulled back in, for big meetings, and we're in the middle of doing counterterrorism operations around the world. And now suddenly we're going to go against North Korea. And man, it was a reality of life for us that, hey, we've been working this asymmetrical warfare stuff, and now that's about to change. How do we go against a force that has the same amount of bullets, same amount of people, everything we've got? An iron curtain trying to fly. We're not going to fly in the middle of the night and hit targets. Now an iron curtain trying to get through. So it was a dramatic change in a reality check at that point. So I think that's where we as big army, big military, step back and go, wait a minute, these threats are still out there. What are we doing to be able to engage these giant threats kind of piece? And it's the threat's there. It's always going to be there. People have a tendency of thinking that, life is all about rainbows and kittens and it's happy and happy, but it's not. It's the reality of it. There's always going to be someone who wants to start a fight out there. Always kind of piece. So we have to be able to stand forward and handle that. And the biggest piece is handle those small fires over there. And that's where that SOCOM, the special operations world, was designed for, was take care of the little fires before it turned into big fires,
So let me ask you, in law enforcement, they call that the broken windows theory. If you take care of the small things, if you keep people off the corner, if you keep the abandoned buildings from getting people into them, if you keep the drug guys off the streets, it takes care of itself in a bigger sense. Is that what you kind of mean? Because I think when we look at these threats too, we're not just looking at flying in and hitting targets. We're looking at a whole new landscape of warfare, the cyber warfare, and we're working with countries that are very advanced in their technologies and fifth generation fighters and all that kind of stuff. How does that all tie into it too?
Well, see, that's what we kind of go back to. If you don't maintain the fundamentals of warfare or fighting, because all this technology's gone for it, if you don't maintain the fundamentals, then guess what happens when it goes bad? And what do? We can't, our GPS is down, our radio's down. What are we going to do? Go back to simple things. You have an azimuth, you've got a compass and all that kind of stuff. That to figure it all out. Matter of fact, so when the Turks came down, invaded Syria, let's say in 2019, came into Syria, and at the same time, we were pulling back all the special operations out of Syria back to called Jersey Slice. So if you look at it, it's right against Iraq. It looks like the Jersey Slice. So it sits right against Iraq piece there. And because there's main oil there and so forth, so we wanted to hold those pieces right there. And the Russians came in. We started seeing a lot of things from the Russians that we hadn't seen in a while. They were jamming a lot of our stuff that we were just unprepared for. We're working around. You go back to fundamentals. These guys are smart and pilots and stuff like that. But we saw a lot of stuff that we hadn't seen before, which was kind of interesting because now I watch the Ukraine stuff going on. I'm like, I'm not seeing any of that stuff that we saw, in Ukraine. So what's going on with that? They got to just kind of holding things back a little bit too. I mean, what's going on and not showing face too much in Ukraine and what they really can do and can't do. I don't know. Again, we saw a different picture when they came into Syria, and that was a really touchy situation in there. Not just, as soon as you shoot at someone from Turkey or Russia, it changes the whole dynamics, so when you're pulling back kind of piece. But we saw a lot of things from those guys that I'm not seeing in Ukraine piece, but I think they're holding back a lot of stuff that we have to prepare for. But again, our worst thing for us right now is going to be cyber, in my opinion, man. I mean, you see little things here that happen to the airports. You see little things that got knocked out, and you saw America flip out. I mean, we saw, even though when we had COVID, everything is flipped out, how do we prepare for that piece? That's a good question,
Well, and it's funny that you say that because let's compare the two. You just said if you lose the fundamentals, if you lose the basics, you lose a lot of things. And you just said the biggest threat is cyber. Well, what's cyber going to do? Knock us back to the prehistoric times, and you're back to the basics again, which no one has studied up on.
Nope. And I think it's a key thing too right now. It's like, how does the U.S. right now, if systems go down, how do we back up everything we're doing? And it's not going to be that we're going back to what, the 60s or 70s. I don't know the basic stuff, but going back and handle that once they get knocked out. How do we do that? And that's something I don't have an answer for. I'm not a cyber guy, and I wasn't on that cyber side of the house. But we got to be thinking about that, and hopefully someone's thinking about that. But hope, can't plan off hope, right?
Right. Well, let's go back to April 1990 when you joined the military. You're young, full of ideals. I know you finished your degree, and we'll get into why you stayed as an enlisted and never went over to the officer later on. But you still did your school, you did your college, all of that kind of stuff. When you join the military and you go in, because you said at first you wanted to do ADA, but then you changed over to, you wanted to go into the pipeline. You were one of the youngest guys. Give me Sean at that age, looking at his career in the future and kind of what his worldview is at that time.
I think, Matt, that's a good question, because I think about that often. What is 18-year-old Sean compared to 53-year-old Sean now? Just a totally different mentality. But coming in at 18, 19 years old, rolling through there, was that I think I had no training scars. So I had no scars on me. And what I mean by that, I had no training put upon me that would lead me one way or another. So when I walked in, I was very open-minded. I talked to a lot of the guys coming through, especially when we go to combat. I said, hey, man, you got to have a blank canvas. Everybody has an idea of what combat is. And it's never that way. You're not in gunfights every day and all that kind of piece, right? So it's like when I walked into it, I believe that I had an open compass or open canvas, clean canvas walking in, and that helped me. So I wasn't expecting anything. And when I went through, I just kind of took the hits and kind of moved forward, and that was kind of just maintain the gray man. Because when I went through, especially SFAS, around selection, it was, I had guys there. And at that time, you had to have, it was a new program coming in. So usually you had to have 4 years experience going into the SFAS, military experience going in. And so I was coming straight out of high school kind of thing for a new program that I started at that time. And the guys around me, man, were my mentors, guys from Ranger Battalion. I had a couple of with the Force Recon guys, and I had a couple of NSD Special Warfare guys, and I just kind of follow them. And I think I always told Brent too, that was the funniest moments is like one of those guys would, fall out or something, heat exhaustion or something happened in front of me, I'd be like, oh man, I'm screwed. I'm not going to make it through it. If these guys ain't making it through it, how am I going to scrawny 125-pound Sean going to make it through the time,
And then you call your dad and he goes, I told you not to do it.
I told you not to do it, yeah. So as 18-year-old Sean, man, I tell you, the world was open to me at that time. I didn't expect anything. I was just open-minded and went with the roles, went with the hits as I went through. And I think that's what drew me to that piece, and that's what I think helped me get through it. Because even when you're doing certain events, you think it's over. I never ever assumed anything was over. It's not over till it's over kind of thing, and I just kept on going until someone really told me it was over. Okay, it's over. All right, next kind of piece.
Okay, the first question I have from that, though, is you say you look back and try to figure out who you were. I got to ask you one specific word. Were you idealistic back then?
No.
Not at all.
I don't think I was, I think, probably a little bit if I look back on it, but if you told me right about just there, I would say no.
Well, the reason I ask idealistic, because I feel like idealistic can get you through a lot of bullshit. If you're idealistic about where you want to be at the end of this thing, where you want to show up in the class, where you want to go after that, and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm here to do, I think it can burn you through a lot of bullshit that pops up in front of you.
Okay, I'm talking you now. Yeah, I'm thinking of idealistic in a little different way, but I think I had an instinct where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be kind of thing. And I tell you, during a lot of things I did, I always would be, whatever event it was, whatever painful event would go, I would think my brother or friends would go, man, only my friends can see me now, kind of what kind of silly thing I'm doing right now as I'm going through. You would think that way, because if you think too much about yourself, it just doesn't work out. That's why you keep yourself at the simplest level and just kind of as you go into these events, and then you push through it and be fine. Anyway.
But here's another problem that I see that pops up. You said that you had a lot of mentors. You had guys that were special forces, naval special warfare, all of that kind of stuff going through. I see another problem because I've seen it in law enforcement where this new program says, hey, this guy out of high school that doesn't have 4 years of experience, he doesn't know anything about the Army, he doesn't know anything about the military or what it does, we're going to let him come through and try this.
Yeah.
You get a lot of, I guess the word would be hate from people around you going, I've earned my spot. How have you earned to be here? So can we kind of walk through that and if that did affect you or if you never saw that show up?
You know what? I didn't feel I ever saw it show up because when you're going through selection or any of those kind of stuff like that, I think it's more of everybody's earned their right to be here. And once you make it to a certain point, they're kind of like, okay, you've earned your right to be here right now. But you're absolutely right. If I look back on it right now and say, no, don't put guys who have no experience coming into this thing, man. They didn't have 4 years experience because there's a maturity level you're looking for, when you're put in certain countries and you're the only 10 Americans in that country and you're making strategic decisions. You don't know you're doing strategic decisions, but you are, because it affects everything in that region, which goes beyond that point. And you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that truly helped me going through was growing up in the military and having that military bearing and having that military mindset and seeing that piece. I think that helped me out, to be honest. So I didn't come from, I didn't live at the beach and been surfing my whole life and suddenly I went into the military kind of thing. So I do believe being around my dad and my brother going in on that piece of my life it helped it helped mentally understand what you're going through and being somewhat, I guess, a little more military bearing mature, if that makes sense.
Well, and that was going to be my next question to you was, what is it like to be so young and possibly immature? Because quite frankly, I didn't mature until I was probably 25, 26, and even probably a little higher. But you're trying to do a, but you're trying to do a job that's mostly seasoned veterans that know what they're doing. So let's take that question that I just asked you about them and let's flip it to you and go, okay, now from your end, being immature, maybe not knowing you're immature, but trying to do this job, how do you do that?
I'm sorry, repeat that question again. So how do I say again?
So we just talked about the people around you going, well, maybe he didn't deserve to be here quite yet. We've been, we put in our 4 years. Yeah. Now let's flip it to your side of it. And you're fresh out of high school, probably immature like the rest of us are. You're getting ready to go do a job that really seasoned guys and guys that have a little bit under them. How do you do that as a kid? Because that's what you are as a kid going through this.
You're absolutely right. And I would have to deal with that whole kid thing, most of my life, starting at a young age inside that program, you make time and grade, time and service kind of thing a little faster at a younger age to hit the next steps. Because when you're gaining rank, there's nothing said, well, you have to be this age. It doesn't work that way, right? So it's a time of grade, time and service, you're bumping up. But you're right. I always looked at everything I did there as, honestly, as an adventure, with everything I did and the guys there. And I made sure that I did everything that was asked of me and beyond. That was the key thing. Was when I need a volunteer, I volunteered. When I need something to learn, I learned. It wasn't like, oh, my job's done, I step aside kind of thing. It was a constantly learning and gaining information, being like a sponge. That was the key thing. Be a sponge when I was moving through. And people saw that and like, okay, this kid is not here just for shits and giggles. He's here to try to move forward and do things in his life kind of piece and be part of this organization and go do these things. So I think the key thing for me was just, man, being open-minded and being a sponge and learning everything about everybody and always asking questions and never, ever assuming that I knew the answer, because I would always ask the guys, what about this? What about this? And learn from them. But when you ask people questions like that and you want to learn from them, they take that as a very big sign of respect. And I do too when people ask me. And I think they really took that. Okay, this guy, he's listening. Let's bring him, because I'm trained. And that's the key thing. Are you trained?
Okay, so let's take that forward. As a kid, you did that. You did above and beyond. You always asked if they needed a volunteer. You always raised your hand. So that made you a very young guy moving through the ranks. And as you got older and older, not only are you one of the young guys, you have the flip of that coin and you're one of the senior guys. So as a senior young guy, do you still follow that same philosophy as you get up? And honestly, as you get up to E6, E7, are you still following that, or does it waver down a little bit?
No, I still followed it. I'm sure there's a gap in there because at a certain point that, I don't know, you're, wouldn't say ego, but there's something that moves forward. There's a gap in there somewhere, but that comes back around. As I matured and was smarter, I felt like I became that sponge again, especially when you start moving the senior ranks, because mentorship isn't just from above, it's from all around you, and that was the key thing. So you take a sponge, you listen to everybody around you, and you take all that information and you make those decisions from after that point. So I think as I went up and up, I maintained that, it's, for instance, I mean, sometimes in the senior rank, I'd be mopping floors. And people are like, why are you mopping floors? I go, because to me, mopping floors is the simplest thing in the world to do. And it's nice to sit there and you're not worried about any other decision-making process or any stuff. You can just mop the floor, People are like, she said, why are you mopping the floor? I go, you know what? Because this is my moment to think about mopping the floor and think to myself first. Like, it's not the simple things of life.
That's a very Zen way of looking at it. That's a very surf way of looking at it. I do want to ask you, because when I ask you about being a young senior guy, the reason I ask that question is because as I look through your career, and you're an E6 at the Pentagon, working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and JSOC, you've got to think you're kind of King Dingling walking around as an E6. I mean, let's be real with each other. You kind of have to think that way just to survive in that, alpha area.
It's It was a unique experience because I was all tabbed at SF Ranger, at combat diver, I had everything running around. Where the Pentagon's interesting because O6s, colonels are privates there. They're all over the place. They're privates, and you are, when the general, the 4-star general is like, he wants to hang out with you or walk with you because General Shuttle's an SF guy, so you walk around with him and kind of BS him a little bit, but it was, no one knows what to do with you, and they just let you go amok, pretty much. I would go all over the Pentagon just trying to figure out the different wheels and different parts of the Pentagon and go to different offices, I introduce myself, and learn. It's like, what do you, first thing is, so what do you do? And I go, well, I do this. Oh, cool, man. Show me what you do. And that was a key thing I always tell everybody growing up when I went up ranks was, hey, man, send your most junior guys to the senior level and let them see how things work at that level. They understand what they're looking for at that level. You take that information, all that knowledge you've gained, and bring it back down to your teams or whatever, and pass that information on. It's a huge asset to understand the multiple levels of how decisions are made. If you're sitting in the top tier, man, you learn a lot. And I learned a lot as an E6 sitting in that top tier. Took that information back with me, understood how things operated and what they were looking for at higher levels.
Did you ever introduce yourself and say, hey, this is what I do? And I want to know, honestly, did anyone ever go, get the fuck out of my office? I don't care who you are.
No, everybody was pretty cool. I mean, when you walk around.
That's amazing to hear, though, because like you said, an O6 is a private around there. Like, it's a pretty amazing to hear that an E6 walked into someone's office and said, hey, I'm here. I just want to introduce myself. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's great.
I mean, honestly, I think they were deprived of socialization because, like, well, yes, I'll tell you about my job, and but you know what I tell you know what you do by that, the old saying is that amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. You're talking to all the people that move logistics, that make things happen. And that's the key thing. You're gaining reputation, you're gaining rapport with all those individuals. And eventually in time, you're creating that rapport and mentorship circle that you can always come back to and enjoy. Because I could be walking around the Pentagon and then General Shelton would say, I really need this. And you go, I know who to go talk to. I go talk to someone. I talked to him yesterday. He doesn't tell me now. I said it was a key thing of building those relationships all over the place. And as you grow up in this community, it is all about building those relationships. When you look fast forward now, so when we left Iraq with Saddam and then ISIS came in, there was a block there, right? An empty space almost. Guess what? We had built awesome relationships with certain sources inside Iraq so that we could come back in the special operations world and reunite with those guys and help us inside in that piece, It's all about building relationships, and I do that in my life now. It's huge, maintaining good relationships with good people.
Okay, so you said that you went up to that senior level. You always wanted to see what the decisions, how they were made at the higher levels or on the steps all the way up. So I have to pose a question to you then. When you see the withdrawal out of Afghanistan, when you see certain things that have happened now, and you know how those decisions are made at the top, are you ever disillusioned, or are you ever kind of scratching your head going, I don't understand why we did that, because you've seen it at all the levels?
True, but you got to understand at the senior level at the military side, there are certain positions that overrank those, right? That chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and that goes up to def and goes to President of the United States. And once they make that call, you ain't doing anything because they have, and I've seen it, and I hate to say it, I've seen it in my little small thing, running for mayor here. In a small town politics, you see that because you make a promise, and whether it's right or wrong, you're going to execute on that promise. And it's kind of like life changes when you made that promise 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Things change, but yet you're still executing on that promise that you made 4 years ago, and maybe that wasn't the right decision in that case because that was, I don't care what I tell you, but it was deliberate withdrawal. No, that was a hasty exfil. Getting out. It was embarrassing to watch.
Well, and I wonder, because you were at the Pentagon, because you were in special operations, because you were all over that part of the world, I wonder when you look at it and you see it, when you say a hasty exfil and you know that we can do better, how does that affect you mentally? Because for sure we can do better.
I tell you, it probably doesn't bother me too much. You know why? Because I'm not thinking about it. It really is. At a certain point, you have to realize what you can and can't affect. And then when you come out for 31 years, you don't want to get your anger built up. You come to, that point of life going, I can't affect it. So I have to move on, I don't let it. I'm not going to sit here and drink myself or be cussed at the TV. Matter of fact, I don't even watch national news anymore. I watch the local news. That's all. And even that, times like, God dang, that's terrible news.
I think you mostly watch the local just for the surf report. But I think that a lot of people, and I'm speaking from the law enforcement community, don't understand that when you get to a certain level in your career and you go, there's nothing I can do about that. I just got to say yes, do what I'm told to do it to the best of my ability, and just move on. I don't think a lot of people grasp that understanding that at a certain point, it is what it is.
And I've always loved that saying, it is what it is. And you kind of develop up there. How that escalated so fast, there could have been a lot better plan. But the problem was the plan was based on a date. This is the date, Xville. And I was like, you can't necessarily do that. That's a general mark on a calendar. There are certain phases, you have to meet certain requirements in each phase. That should be what should be. And then if it gets pushed to the left, it gets pushed to the left, or pushed to the right, whatever you want to do. But they didn't do that. They set a date and it just crumbled. The problem is people don't understand when it came to Afghanistan and Iraq and all those places, they know we're on a timeline. America's not gonna last forever. They know that we're on a timeline. Sooner or later, we're gonna leave because we're gonna get bored with it, or we're gonna our policies gonna change, or we're gonna pull things out. That's the nature of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, a bunch of places like that.
It's interesting to say. I like how you say it, though. We get bored with it, and that is definitely an American thing, is to get bored with something. All right, let's go back to, as you're making yourself out to be this warrior that you ended up being. You got Ranger School, Dive School, Jump School, Special Forces Assessment. Is there a point that stood out in your training that kind of changed you at a basic level, where you went, I'm different than I was before I did all this stuff?
I think there's two ways of it. I think combat divers school did. It kind of push you to the point now that you're in that water and going through all those vents and doing all that kind of stuff. It kind of it matured you a little bit, because there's a lot can go wrong in that water, and if you have a bad minute in combat diver school, you're gone. There ain't no, well, good luck tomorrow. Now you're gone, kind of thing. And kind of mature to that point. Ranger school was interesting. It definitely, I would say, all these schools helped mature me to kind of make who I was, because I really would take a lot of that Ranger mentality and Ranger school further in my career later on, kind of thing. And it's always interesting in the military. I'm kind of going off a tangent here, how each person respects you differently based on an organization. So like SEALs. Yeah, we're SEALs, like, yeah, we're SEAls. But they had a Ranger tab, like, hey, man, go talk to you. You're kind of friends with them, kind of thing at that point, And then if a SEAL was the SF guy, the combat diver, we'll be like, yeah, we're going to talk to him, kind of thing. Your buddies at that point, So it was interesting, But the Ranger tab always seemed to me to be that device that would bring all the forces kind of together in a weird way, But it would mature me, but also in Ranger school, man, you would also see, because now you're going through a different mentality of people. So now I went through SF Combat Diver School. They're all specifically from that Special Forces community. Now I went to Ranger School. You have a bunch of people from different places, infantry, all that kind of stuff too, going through with you. They don't have the experience that you already have going through. And it was a lot of times, man, it was, like I said, it was hurting cats at Ranger School. It was a different mentality there. They all weren't triple alphas, a AAA mentality coming through. And so a lot of times you find a lot of people, you're just kind of dragging through that school. But it also taught you then how to handle those situations that people weren't at that level that you thought everybody should be at. And that's a key thing about Ranger School. You learn to deal with a lot of bullshit from different people and different abilities.
Were you able to do that young in your career?
I think so, especially because when I think back of the little things I did in order to prepare myself mentally, and I wouldn't say get around the system, but to understand what I was about to go through. So I knew going, like, for instance, Ranger School, when I was going to Ranger School, that was 96. that I was going to be treated like a private. I just came from SF combat diver and already done stuff in South America, so my mentality was that unconventional mentality. And Ranger School was very much, advanced infantry kind of style piece. This is how you do it. This is the only way we do it. There's no alternates, go this way. But like I went through, so back when I went through, you had BDUs, and BDUs got patches and all that stuff on there. So one of the things, a lot of the cadre in Ranger School that time had failed out on Special Forces selection or failed out of Q or something like that kind of piece. So they always see like the outline of your patch is still on your uniform, even though your patches were all gone. No one's a rank there. It's all a number. You're just a Ranger kind of at that point. So I would switch out. I would get my brother's uniforms, and they're all flight uniforms, BDUs with a patch on them. So they had the outline of it, and so him looking at me, I was just like, you see some aviation unit, so they wouldn't harass me. This shit, think about that stuff, but it was literally preparing myself. That's when I started dipping, and that's really, I only dipped for Ranger School. I started dipping Red Man and stuff like that. And
that was just probably to stay awake, though, wasn't it?
It was, and to bring the food down, your hunger down, because back then it was a deal and a half going to Ranger School. So let's do all that stuff, But you thought ahead about a lot of stuff, and I understood. I had a good understanding of what I needed to do to be successful and how to set the conditions for myself prior to going in. Where a lot of people were doing all this stuff, I was like, man, work on the fundamentals, push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run, rucking, read that Ranger handbook, start understanding all that stuff, and understand the Ranger Creed. If you didn't know the Ranger Creed going in there, you were done. And it was like you memorize that thing before going in. So it's, set the conditions for your success going through.
So I got to ask you, you said you'd already done some stuff in South America when you went to Ranger School. So we're talking 95, you're in Ecuador, okay? Yeah. You joined in 90, so you're 23 years old.
Yeah.
23 years old in another country working counter narcotics, counter international criminal networks. You got to put us in that mind state to be that, because even to be a cop in the U.S., you have to be 21 years old before you can buy your own bullets and everything. Yeah. So you got to put me in the mind state of working in another country for transnational criminal organizations.
That was, I think back in those days, I was like, how did I get here? Kind of, man, it was really cool. It was a hell of an experience because it was an adventure, man. I mean, it was just, you're in this foreign country bouncing around, and people don't understand a lot of time what you do. It's the tip of the iceberg, is that you're doing these kind of operations, this foreign fit or something like that kind of thing going on, or Jason going on. But it's underneath that they understand that this team's also doing other things, collecting information, gathering, and stuff like that, creating a pattern of life and targets, all that kind of stuff too, But it was such a crazy uniqueness for me. It was one of the greatest things I remember. And I was very excited about this, was that we crossed over one of the rivers, and it was like the outlaw Josie Wales, they brought the vehicle on. And we had old Land Rovers, and you're moving full, they're pulling you across on the rope, going across the things. And it was true unconventional operations back then. And like I said, you weren't armored up, you weren't in uniform, you were moving around plain clothes and all that kind of stuff, bouncing around Ecuador kind of piece. And it was a hell of an adventure. And man, if I look back now, compared to what would lead into later on in life, it was just like, at that moment, again, I looked at everything as an adventure. And I was like, man, this is a really cool adventure.
But I think that goes back to that question I asked you, that idealistic question. If you're looking at everything as an adventure and not, I'm sure you looked at it as real, because of course it's real missions going on, but to look at it with kind of that, I don't know, that kind of dream cover over it, going, wow, like I get to do this. I don't think that a lot of people look at their jobs that way. Wow, I get to do this. And so therefore, even when it sucks, it's good. Right. The question that I would have for you, though, is you talked about the FID, the foreign internal defense, and doing those kind of missions. The question I would have from that is, you're doing that in South America. Of course, that transferred over into the Middle East and Afghanistan, and Iraq, where they were teaching a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah. When you look back at the South American stuff and you compare it to Iraq, Afghanistan, what's the difference between the two? What are you teaching them differently than you're teaching other people? Because you're not necessarily in South America teaching them to fight off terrorists. You're teaching them how to keep criminal warlords from taking over places.
Yeah. It's the same kind of mentality when it comes back to the basic fundamentals of what you're doing down there. The Middle East is just a whole different animal too, though. I tell you, the working in Central South America, to me, is most of them want to do the job. A different mentality in Central South America compared to the Middle East. The Middle Eastern mentality is difficult at times. How they want to do operations, and you trying to get them to do operations with you and across the board there. So how it rolled over was still the basic fundamentals of how we taught everything we did. And the key thing came back to was you're building relationships, right? You're building those sources and so forth in those countries to be able to, if something does happen in those countries, to be able to come back to those relationships and sources to be able to do the operations later on in life. That was kind of key things. I want to say you're building lines necessarily, but you are out there connecting and developing relationships in countries if something does go wrong later on in life. And that's the same mentality as you were doing overseas.
Well, let me ask you then, because you say the Middle East was difficult at times. That was a very nice way to put it too. I guess my question or my statement to that would be, I think that the South American countries wanted you there. Does that make any sense to you, where you say,
Yes.
We were there doing a job that they really wanted to get done?
Yes. And especially if you go down there, everything they have, even like the patches and everything in the walls, everything is really kind of off U.S. They look at it, idolize the U.S. Special Operations. They want you there to help them learn them and get things. They never were afraid to take charge and be front in the stack and go do operational pieces like that ever. I mean, some countries are better than others. But I mean, overall, these guys are ready to go home. Some of the courses down there, like later on in life, when you go down to Guatemala and you're working with the Cabil, man, during their training, they're doing patrols in the jungle in just underwear, no boots, nothing. You're like, I'm not really sure how this comes together. Sure, the underwear, got it, man.
I got to know, did you ever take part in it? Did you ever go native with them and try it?
I did not. So we had a guy when I was the AOB Sergeant Major, and in what was it, in 2012, 13. So out of Honduras, but you're overseeing operations down there, special operations. So we had a team up there doing operations, but we had a young ranger that was going through the Cabil school at the time. So we would check up on him, making sure he was healthy enough. And he was pretty beat up. He was pretty bad. It's a wearing school, not necessarily that it's wearing from too much physical work. It's just wearing from disease that it wears out in the body. So our job, our medics, was to keep him moving, keep him alive, keep him moving, to graduate kind of thing, because it's embarrassing how guys graduate. Now that same guy later on would go to Special Forces selection, and he would fail out. He'd fail the psych.
Because I see when you say that, all I can think of is Apocalypse Now and the Colonel that goes native with them, and you have that. Okay, so South America, you're working in there. 9/11 happens. You're 11 years into your career.
Yeah.
You've earned your Tower of Power. You've worked operations, real world operations in South America. Walk me through seeing 9/11 happen. Does it change the landscape for you? Does it change your mind state? Does it change your focus?
Change everything. So you gotta look where I was in 9/11. So I just graduated from the University of Florida. So I got pushed up. I did my University of Florida. And at that time, it was kind of a decision to make. It's like, hey, listen, you could leave school when you graduate school, active duty, or try the civilian world out kind of piece. So I was like, well, let's try the civilian world out. And that was 1999 kind of piece. So 1999, got out to San Francisco in 2000. I picked San Francisco. My degree was in advertising. So it was like, hey, what's going on? Again, looking for the adventure, right? So why not go to San Francisco, look for the adventure kind of piece? Got out there, and I was kind of living that life there. And one morning, I was actually, we just got done, well, I think a couple of months, now more than 2 or 3 months, we just got done filming We Were Soldiers. And we were down in the street, and I was moving my truck because I lived downtown in San Francisco. And that's when I heard the towers got hit. Listen to Howard Stern, you got a single plane. I was like, little plane hit tower. I'm like, that sounds kind of weird. So I got inside, watched TV, and kind of watched it unfold right there. At the time, my wife was, she was my wife at the time, but my fiance, that became my wife, she was doing a photo shoot, bikini shoot down at Virgin Islands. My parents were Ireland, so they didn't know to get in touch with me. So at that point, it was like, you get the call. It's like, hey, man, back on. I'm like, yeah. So why would you not? I mean, you can't train for the Olympics and not want to go to the Olympics. So at that time, it was like, yes, 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 let's go. And you're really hoping, man. I always admire, was it 595, and I think it was a triple neck or something. First guys on the team in Afghanistan. Everybody wants to be the first guy on the ground. If you don't want to be the first guy on the ground, you're in the wrong business. You just desire to be that. What was it like to be the very, very first guys to put your foot in the ground and completely back? So that was that. We spun up and we got the call back and said, hey man, all teams coming back. So as you see, all special operations have the reserve teams. You have, the SF has the 1920th Group, Special Forces Group. You have Naval Special Warfare has, 16 or 17, 18. And back in time, Force Recon has a Force Recon element, stuff like that. So they kind of hold on to all their guys who've done all that training because they don't want to lose that. They spend a lot of money stuff in those guys. So at that point, then when that kicked back up, those guys from the reserve teams are like, picking back up. And I was like, heck yeah, right back into the fold again, But that was in 11 years. So I was in 11 years that happened. And I was, like I said, man, I was like, well, what's happened next to it? That was kind of that decision point in my life. If 9/11 never happened, I probably would have maybe got in the military in 2 or 3 years at that point and then moved out kind of thing. Because you're at that point, that halfway 20 kind of piece, but 9/11 just completely changed my world for me, I hate to say it, for better, because, I think we mentioned before, and not here, is that, I love God and country, but man, I love my job and I love the guys I was around, man. We love it. We love doing our mission. We love doing our job. I mean, ups and downs, man, but man, what a great place to be and a great time to go train, do what you do.
But that would be my question to you, because when I hear you, you see it happen and they call and say, hey, we're going to put you guys back on. You're like, yeah, we're ready to go. Do you think you were ready to leave civilian life? Because I have this feeling in all the times that you and I have talked on the phone and stuff that you didn't really care for it back then. You really focus on it hard now, but I don't know that you were too into that civilian life back then.
No, I wasn't. I mean, I had fun with it now, but there's always something, even to this day that I'm retired, I still feel still missing something, what that is, were you in long enough? Did you do enough? It sounds kind of weird, but you're always like, did I really reach that climax of my career kind of piece? It's always in the back. At that point too, at 11 years, you're like, and I've done all this stuff, and this is not quite where I feel like this book should end, kind of thing. And that's when it kicked up, and that was it. It was like, yeah, a lot of people thought in different conversations that, this was going to be fast. It was going to be done in 6 months, done in a year, over. So if you're going to get your gun on, it's time to get your gun on kind of piece, So it was our desire to get in there as fast as we can to get our piece of the pie, and, do that mission kind of piece, especially since they, attacked us in our homeland. It's like, man, we're going in, let's go do this, and obviously it lasted a lot longer than a year kind of piece.
They were off on that timetable. Yeah, they messed that one up. I guess more to the point though, my question about the civilian world is, you're in advertising, you're in San Francisco, which back then was a beautiful place, great food, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Back then. I'm about to point this out too. What adventures are there? There's none. You're in advertising. There's no adventures going on. Now you dodge shit there and stuff, and that's an adventure just to make it through the city. But back then, there's no adventures for you, and that's why whenever you say it kicked off and they're like, we're ready to get you back, I don't think that was a hard sell.
It wasn't a hard sell at all. I can tell you the one benefits that so when I went into the advertising agency, I worked there. A lot of the seniors kind of knew my background and would pull me in and ask me, well, how do you handle these situations? Because they're working with the people's company, So they kind of lean on me to ask me these questions. Here, I was nobody coming into this place, young guy, totem pole in the agency, But they asked you, how do you? Well, I'm going to give them a task, condition, standard. This is how you do these things, and this is how you manage it. And you do checks and whatever kind of piece, They didn't really understand that mentality kind of piece. So it was interesting talking with them and teaching them at the same time. They were also teaching me about that world, but excuse me, I was also teaching them about at their level how to be a leader, and how to work with your subordinates and stuff like that. They didn't quite understand that yet, I found very interesting. But you're right. It was a, I don't know, I hate to say it, man, when's the next happy hour kind of thing, at that time in life, as I tell something until we figured out. And then like I said, we did the film, We Were Soldiers. And that after that film, I was kind of like, well, do we look at going to Hollywood and doing something in Hollywood, and trying something down there? That was actually going to be probably my next move. Was head that way before 9/11 kicked off. And then obviously it was exciting, man, and later we talk about that. So when you bookmark the end of my career with, the embassy attack and all that stuff going on, man, it was exciting. It was amped up again because you're at command level that, it's not, you're dealing with command stuff. You're still overseeing the guys and doing stuff and doing your stuff. You're kind of the middle where you're bouncing around, but you're not on a team. You're not running a guy, So when all that kicked off, it was exciting. You're back into the folds, you're back into that levels. Even nowadays, for me, I wake in the morning, I got brain fog in the morning. I really don't wake up until I work out. When I work out, is that a jolt of excitement, that level to pump me up, that I come out of that brain fog. And it's almost that my whole career has been outside of that brain fog because of that career I went to. And now I'm out of it. I instantly every morning like a brain coming into it.
Well, so then let's talk about something else that's a part of that. Now, you said your fiance at the time, soon to be your wife, is there. She's seen you as a civilian, and I'm guessing since she was your fiance at the time, she'd seen you also in the military.
Yeah.
Okay. 9/11 happens. The world turns different. Yes, you worked in South and Central America. Yes, you did some stuff. The world is a different place. And I've heard people say, I had Randall Parks on here, and he said the difference in 9/10 on a Marine Corps base and 9/12 on a Marine Corps base was completely different. So we're looking at a different world. Is it a hard sell to her to go, hey, look, I'm jumping right back into the fray. I know we're about to get married. I know we're about to start this life. I'm leaving.
I don't know. We're even asking her.
And I don't mean that you ask her permission, but you at least have to bring her into the fold.
I think she knew that, though. Yeah. I mean, once that happened, she understand my background and all that kind of stuff. So she knew once that happened that I was going to be, with everybody in special operations, that tip of the spear, that I was involved with that, and that was going to happen, kick off. And, she was just kind of on that point, when's it going to happen? When are you taking? And a lot of times it's interesting, man. You get so dialed in about pushing forward and doing your job, you just kind of lose focus of everything else around you, But as you mature and you do enough rotations of whatever you're doing, you come to realization that even though you're up and out looking forward, everything back and in, family-wise, house-wise, has to be taken care of, squared away, situated in order for you to push forward and focus on the mission and not stuff on the backside, In those young days, you didn't think about that. You're just like, I'm going around and gunning. But as you matured, and I guess the rotations came more routine, you're kind of used to that point, though, is, hey, man, I got to make sure that everything back here is squared away so it doesn't cause me to lose focus down range. And you see a lot of guys down range. We've had to pull guys from missions, take a gun out of the fight because you could tell that something was going on back home, that their mind was not in the right spot, and you had to pull them off as objective. So back then, again, it was just focused on downrange, but as you matured, you were more heavily involved with the family. But my wife always knew that, the rotations were just part of the life that she came into. And you see a lot of families that it doesn't work out that way. Luckily enough, I had been on my first wife, the whole time, which is a rare in our community, that piece, and being able to raise my son is a rarity in our community. I know guys, man, they just can't grow up at all. They're on third wife.
This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. At Trident, they are more than just coffee. They are storytellers. It's crafted by veterans. Their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew coffee today and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee. You're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Use promo code DTD15 for 15% off your order. Well, and do you think that the family that you came from, bringing your girlfriend, then fiance, then wife into that fold of that family, seeing your mom the way she stayed with your father through everything, do you think that that helped?
It must have helped, to see that kind. And I think she kind of came from she came kind of a broken family herself. So I think her seeing that and being supportive and being to stay with that and seeing how my mom and dad stayed together at that time was the key thing, is stick with it, stick through it kind of piece,
Do you think it was always, and if this is too personal, don't answer, but do you think in all of the deployments, all the time that you spent, do you think that it ever got messed up a little bit between you and her? Do you think that there was ever a time that you didn't, like you said, focus on everything in the background and get that all in order so that you could go forward?
Yeah, sure did. There are plenty of times that things got, I wouldn't say hostile, but things got uncomfortable, and it was was that my fault or her fault? It just, things happened. But luckily we worked through it kind of piece. Because you understand, the first days we went to Afghanistan, when I first went to Afghanistan, 2003, I didn't talk to her for almost 2 months, a month and a half, when I hit the ground. Because back in those days, it wasn't like you could walk in and pick up the phone kind of thing. It was all, I mean, I miss those days. Those were great days. It was all, but all I can think about when you see the War II, the SAS bouncing around Africa, and that's what it was. And it was just open vehicle, Mad Max vehicles, and it was all search and destroy operations, punch out for 2 weeks, come back, rest and refit, punch out again, and you're talking to comms, headquarters, moving around kind of thing. It was great. But the reality of life, didn't talk to my wife for good months, if not more than that, when we launched. Now, everything changed later on in years kind of thing, but it became, especially to a young wife at that time, we just got married when I first pushed. So to a young wife that her husband is now gone, she doesn't know where he is. Well, she knows where I am, but she doesn't know what's going on, hasn't heard from me, and so it kind of wears at it, So the first part of our marriage was rough, but we got through that. We figured it out. And what that figured out is, what it was? It was communication. As time rolled on, it was communication. It was just talking to my wife, making sure everything here was secure, and then communicate as best I could when I was downrange. That was key. That kept her on a level keel.
So let me ask you then, when you're first over there, you're first married, okay?
Yeah.
You're living like Mad Max, and according to your own words, you love it.
Yeah.
Do you honestly ever sit down and think, hey, I haven't talked to my new wife in a month? Or does it ever even cross your mind at that time?
At that time, it really doesn't, man. There is so much going on, you're just still trying to take in what's going on around you. You're so aware of your situation, kind of bringing it all in. You're not really focused up on, and you're trying to hopefully you're hoping everybody back home understands that you haven't heard from me for a reason, because we are getting at it. We're out there doing the mission we're supposed to do. And like I said, at that time in life, it was just, we had our global phone, GPS phone was called, can't remember something in my head. So we had one, so a sat phone, we had one on us, to be able to call headquarters. It was, part of your PACE plan, your primary, alternate, emergency comm systems, but we just started really using it to call home to about a month and a half in it, because we didn't really have time to do at that time. And see, when you came back and rested, you're only talking rest and refit for like maybe 3 days, 4 days, and then you're punching out again. And it's a busy time coming back and getting your vehicles ready, getting your gear again, ammo, all your stuff again, focus on the fight and get ready to go and pushing back out again. You know.
How do you think you've changed as a person and as a soldier? We talked about South and Central America, Ecuador, Bolivia. You're 23 years old, making these major decisions. Now you're pushing into your 30s. You're married now. You have a semi-different focus in the world back here. How have you changed as a person and as a soldier?
I think because that time was, you learned a lot from that first trip in Afghanistan. You mature a lot because you put everything you learned, and then you're learning new stuff into the situation you're out there, kind of. So you mature quickly, but you also learn. That's where the key thing. That first push is when I really learned about, you walk in with a blank canvas and kind of paint that canvas when you're on the ground and doing your stuff. Because you walked into it, man, I was like, man, we're going to be in gunfights every day. I've seen the movies and done all this kind of things, but it wasn't that way. It's just not that way. So it's an expectation management. Walk in with an expectation management. What do you think the situation is going to be, and you can never be let down on that piece. It's like I do a lot of expectation management now. I'm retired out in the civilian world, just with people and somewhere like that. And I'm sure you've dealt with the same thing. It's just like when you bring it back, you've definitely matured so much at that point. You put yourself in situations, in limited situations that you haven't really done before, and it's mentally, wearing, and it's physically wearing, because now, like I said, you don't have. So I love seeing those SAS stuff, man, because it wasn't like we had a bunch of gyms, man. You were just, you weren't working out. You were just, doing operational pieces, and those thin guys moving around. That's all you were, And that was, but days change, times change, and now you have gyms and your stuff and your team houses and all that stuff overseas, and it would change. And it was interesting to see that because I saw it from the beginning. And I saw it all the way at the end, kind of piece, how the politics, how everything changes on the ground. Every time I go back, even inside, I see the changes when I was on the ground there. It's just kind of interesting to see how politics get involved and how the war evolves and changes as you go through.
Well, you talk a lot about a blank canvas coming into Afghanistan. We've talked about Ecuador and Bolivia. When you get to Afghanistan, do you look around and go, I haven't really ever trained for this kind of operation, or were you good to go when you hit the ground? I know that you said there was a lot of learning. Of course that is in every new environment, but did you kind of look around and go, I've done some stuff, but I haven't really prepared for this?
No, I never really thought that. The one unique piece about, we did a lot of the ground and mobility vehicle teams, all that kind of stuff, moving and learning that kind of stuff. But there's certain teams that are designed for that. That's what they do across deserts and that, come out of 50 people, stuff like that. So that was a big learning experience for us. We did a lot of the vehicle stuff prior going in, but when you hit the ground on there and you really see what the terrain does to these vehicles, you become, you look for mechanics, because now you're welding new stuff on these vehicles, you're welding weapons mounts on these vehicles, you're doing all these things and changing. So your dynamic of that team really is dynamic. You do a whole lot of different things, but now you've expanded that dynamic, so a whole lot of that's changing.
So we're talking 06, 07 Iraq. Now, Afghanistan and Iraq, I think we can agree, two different landscapes, completely two different, I guess, political missions, because
Yeah.
I think that 06, 07, 08, we're starting to get into more politics in these wars. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. 06, 07 was the most American lives lost in Iraq, was that 06, 07 time period. There was at a time during that the U.S. kind of looked at things and said, we're losing this war. And we need to change things quickly. So I do know at that time that kind of what they did, they shouldn't say unleash the dogs of war, but what they did is they allowed special operations to go do what they needed to go do. They open those gates and allow us to go push forward and do little operations, constantly, which I think was a huge change in the war to be able to go do that kind of piece. But but yeah, so I think by doing that, you did allow the war to shift gears. But it was watching the political, so and Iraq was again, if I enjoyed it, we had a good time. It sounds weird by saying that, but it was a very exciting time. It was very adventurous, and we did a lot of operations and things that you would never ever be able to do in life. And we had the opportunity to go do this stuff, man. They flying, waiting on a tarmac, waiting for a high value. Could we call them targets then? Can't remember when we switched over. So it came to a point in politics you couldn't call a bad guy a high value target. Couldn't call him a target anymore. Had to be a high value individual. I can't remember what contractor when switched over.
Same way in law enforcement. They've changed a lot of wording.
It's like, like the politicians and everybody, and even the conventional military, they put all these rules stuff on you, and you just say, okay, you go, all right, this is stupid. In your mind, you say it's stupid, but you know what? I go, I'll figure it out. I'll work around this. Go ahead and put it on me. It cost me that link, And I'll give you I'll give you two different ones. And so we're kind of bouncing around. In Honduras, the Joint Task Force Bravo commander was an 06, and I was working with him. And but he was part of he ran the base, right? And we were the Special Operations Compound on. But he was an SF Ranger combat diver. He was an awesome guy. And he was called out in a meeting saying, hey, you can't run on the roads with headphones. He's a big triathlon guy. And he goes, what do you mean? Because this is a military base. You can't run on the roads with headphones. He says, okay. So he went out and had his staff get the definition of a road, diameters, everything, the weight stuff. So they mapped out the whole base, what met the definition of a road, and then identified these are all the places you could run with headphones across the base. I was like, sure, I'll do that just for you. I kind of figured that around at Kennedy's. But yeah, you saw that, and so 06, 07 was so I was team sergeant that time, we roll in, and it was interesting because people don't understand where, even like Christmas Day, you're doing operations because you don't want the guys sitting around Christmas Day. People are like, what if someone gets killed on Christmas Day? Hey man, it's just another day for us. We're doing operations, the target's hot, we're going kind of things. And everybody's on board with that. It was the team just constantly wanting to go to operation. And even got to a point where you got to kind of keep the wolves at bay, your team, because if the wolves start getting bored, they're going to do stupid shit. And it's just the way it is, So it's like even low-hanging fruit coming as, hey, man, we got low-hanging fruit. Let's go hit it. Go and take them out real quick kind of piece, Just keeping the tools sharp. You got to keep those tools sharp, and that's kind of piece with doing that. But we're talking about 06, 07. I'm sure I lost you in my tangent right there.
No. This is perfect that you're talking about this because like we said, it changed politically. You got to start doing things even more than you had been able to do in Afghanistan and South and Central America. And you're going after all of this stuff. I wonder, though, when you're going after, like you said, small targets, big targets, do you think that the target list is ever going to end? When you honestly look at it as a team sergeant over there and everything you're doing, are you like, are they just fucking falling out of the sky or what? Because it's just a never ending list.
It was, and you do get to a point you're trying to figure out then at this point, are we just taking out criminals or are we taking out terrorists? What's going on? And where is that line, between the two in certain areas kind of piece, Because I'm not looking here to take out criminals in society. I'm looking to take in terrorist organizations that are, affecting the world. They're sitting here. But you do question that several times as you go through a piece, So it does. But, as soon as we did an operation in Iraq and we took out the main, it was looking for the ledgers. The ledgers were the money guys, how the money moved, so how they would finance any kind of terrorist.
So were you taking out Hawalas at the time?
Yeah, Hawalas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So we did Hawala operations in that piece there. So one of the big Hawala ones, we weren't strictly doing Hawalas, but if that pops at a time, we go chase Hawalas kind of thing, And it was interesting going after that because now you're chasing down the money guy, high value individual who is overseeing the finances for these terrorist organizations that are going from whatever country pushing into Europe kind of piece there. So we would go take out these guys, get the ledger, and then you would stop. But you would stop these money operations going through Europe, It may stop for a week or two, but guess what? It's going to get picked up again. Just the criminals they're not terrorists aren't stupid at higher levels. They have courses of action. This goes bad. We have a secondary course of action, third course of action, kind of be able to manipulate time. And we do a lot of things. Actually, we take a lot of stuff from bad guys. So when we look at our special operation logistics, we look at how bad guys like cartels and bad people, how they do human trafficking, how they move people, how they move weapons, how they move drugs inside the United States and elsewhere. We take how they do that, and we learn from them to how to get our guys in the country clean with rowdy gear and nothing like that. How do we get people in the country? Follow what they're doing, kind of thing. From that. Yeah. But that's what the whole is. We stopped the operations up there, and then they would pick back up kind of these things. So they learn from us having second, third, courses of action to be able to, when I get shut down, we'll go to this guy, and this guy gets shut down, we go to this guy, and they're always working on the next guy kind of case. You're never going to the snake up ahead.
Right. But let me put, and you bring up a very good point. You just said it at so many points. You're looking at, are we just taking out criminals or are we taking out terrorists? The Hawala is a perfect example, because when you're taking out these Hawalas and you're saying you're taking a ledger, I don't think that people understand what you're saying. You're literally taking a paper book ledger from these Hawalas, because that's how it works. There's someone with a ledger in America, and there's someone with a ledger where you're at. Yeah. And that's how it's passed off. There's no digital trails. There's no anything like that. So I wonder, when you talk about that, when you start to question, what are we doing? Who are we taking out here? That is a perfect example of it. So does the line get blurred a lot as we go push towards the end of it?
Yeah, it does. There's no doubt about it. The line gets blurred but it's kind of going. So I can, as long as I can justify it, you're justified based on your link analysis. Who is this guy connected to and how it moves? At that point, then that justifies that target at that point. And that's the key thing. How do I again justify it through my link analysis? And all these guys are patterns of life. Come back to this guy. He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And he's a terrorist. Let's go back kind of piece. But again, even the counter drug operations. The C talk later on was that, how are you able to go after all these other circles, the weapons trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, all that kind of stuff? Because guess what? They all loop into the counter drug worlds, and that gives you the authorities then to go on that point too.
100%. And I think, though, that you said it an interesting way, how you, and let me think exactly how you said it just now, where you verify and you justify, hey, this is a bad guy based on the patterns of life and stuff. But I don't think you just have to justify it in your mission sets. You have to justify it with yourself too, after you start going after criminal after criminal after criminal. Because it's definitely a different law enforcement world than the world I live in, how you were handling it. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I tell you, I just looked at it as target, and that's how we looked at it. It was target, and that was it. I'm just going to do a target.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because you and I have talked about Brent. We both know him. He told me he slept like a baby after he did it. That's what he signed up for. Yeah. Same way with you, because you will agree in the community that you lived in, there's a lot of different thoughts on how you did it. Same way with you, just a target, empty face, nothing.
Yeah. Never emotional about anything. It was just empty space, wound through, never even to this day, people were like, well, that doesn't really bother me. As far as I know, it doesn't bother me, I'm sure my wife may have a different professional, but it doesn't really bug me. It was literally a job, and that's why it was cracking me up. People were like, thank you for your service. I was like, man, pays my bill. I'm retired. It pays my bills, and it was a job. I said, kind of thing, to go do stuff, And again, I loved what I did, we had a lot of fun. I mean, there's always ups and downs. Everything we did, people get hurt,
of course,
but it was quite. But everybody that got hurt, killed or injured, they were the same mentality. They were there to do that, to get in that net, to the fight,
Well, we're moving a little forward to 12 and 13. We've talked about it a little bit, going back into Central and South America. Now, since 03, so 03, 04, 06, 07, and 10 and 11, you're Afghanistan, Iraq, and then back to Afghanistan. So 12 and 13, you're going to Central and South America. Different mission set, kind of the same ideas. I'm sure there were some terrorist organizations, but you're moving back into the criminal element.
Yeah, it was So it was dynamic because you were coming off of a heavy rotation in Afghanistan, and literally 6 months later, you're pushing into Central South America kind of piece. And the hardest thing is to be able to pull the horses back, because you're going, hey man, you sit right down, understand this is different. We're not in Afghanistan. We're not in Iraq. Our rules of engagement are different. There's a different mentality. It's how you're doing what you're working here. And that's the hardest thing. It's getting to shift those gears back, to go into those operational pieces now. But yeah, it's just different mentality. And it really, it was definitely, I think, an easier job going back into Central South America. Easy comms to the wife, talk to her every day, generally speaking, and you can just get on the computer. It was definitely a different mentality from where you just came from kind of piece. But a lot of different problem sets, and you're dealing with different problem sets, because now I'm dealing with ambassadors, mill groups and stuff like that, and countries that I have to, that's like me, the commander, and I have to go in there and, have to go, hey, we need these guys in here. This is what we're doing, because I'm not doing that, because I got to talk to the ambassador, and the ambassador's got to talk to the country, and just kind of things like that. I mean, there were times we put a guy into in preparation for something about to happen. We pushed a guy into a country early to kind of set up for success, and then it didn't happen, didn't get approved. So we stuck him in. We had to sneak him out. I was like, I was thinking this year. I was, planning for this thing.
Hey, remember that thing we told you to do? It's off. It's off. We're coming to get you.
Oh, crikey. We were trying to be ahead of the game.
I want to ask you, though, about what you just said when you talked about, coming in from Afghanistan 6 months later. You're slowing down, you're doing pattern of life, you're doing surveillance, you're doing a lot of different things that are very law enforcement based. Yep. In your job. I got to understand how hard. You said it was an easy assignment for you because you got to call home and everything. Yeah. But I would think that there's more to it, even with you. And I'm asking about you and your guys. Yeah. When you've been running in the red for so many years and you just crank back on it, there's got to be some adjustment. There's got to be a hard time adjusting to a little bit of it.
To coming back down to Central and South America?
Right. Yeah.
There is. And the guys could get in trouble, and you have to kind of be careful of that, because now they're in a semi-permissive environment. And it's like, you've really got to let them know, hey, you're in this country, this is going on, you got to be careful what you do. And it is. And it is a tough thing to do. There's no doubt about it. Because once you're shifting those gears without getting too much into it, it's the guys, they want to party like rock stars sometimes, and they come down, and it's because you've been running the red for so long, and now they're
exactly,
and you're like, you can't do that, back it down, And every country was a little different where they were kind of doing different things, But there was. You get calls in the middle of the nights, and you're like, who did what? Son of a bitch, okay. What level we at? Anybody know about it? What's going on now? Okay, let's go ahead and, and talk about this and kind of fix it, But you see a lot of things like that, and because, like you said, you've been running in the red, man. And it's a tough thing to shift gears to now you're going 200 miles an hour, now you're going 25 miles an hour kind of thing,
Which do you find... All right, think about this question when I ask it. I want you to think about it for a second before you answer it. Which is more rewarding? Taking out transnational criminal organizations, stopping sex trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, or your fight in Afghanistan and Iraq where you're taking out terrorist organizations? Which one do you feel is more rewarding for you?
Man, I like doing them all. But I think, I tell you, is the ones that we did inside the United States were probably the most rewarding ones, because those were right in your backyard. And that was kind of and what people don't understand is that you could come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, and then other guys who weren't involved in that CTOP task force they're going back training cycles, going back to the family, doing their thing, but you're going back really back into kind of the red. but it's on your back of your backyard, your homeland kind of piece. And there are many situations that, I'll give you one in particular, that we were pulling CTR, close target reconnaissance, on some Pakistani gas stations and stuff like that. And so what they were doing, they were moving money from their gas stations and other locations, used cars areas, and that money was being filtered up, and that money would then be pushed back overseas to training camps, stuff like that. So follow the money, the money will get you where you need to take the bad guys out, kind of piece. But that was all going on inside the United States. So we were doing CTR for other federal agencies. So we're not taking doors, not a job inside the United States, but you're passing that information off to local, state, and federal law enforcement to be able to act on that piece. So during one of the operations, I was up in D.C. Meeting, and I got a phone call, and I said, "Hey, primary target is moving towards your Homeland, where your house is." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yep, we're tracking him right now. He's moving that way." I said, "Roger that." Called my wife, said, "Hey, where you at?" She goes, "I'm at the shop." I said, "Okay, stay at the shop. Don't go to the house. I'm not sure what's going on here." And they followed the primary target. The primary target went past my housing. I went to the next housing, into a house almost a couple blocks from us. Come to find out, his grandparents live right there. Yeah, right there. With a couple of blocks from my house. That's kind of piece, And it's kind of one of those things, it's always this, you can't come back to relax. You just kind of back into a different kind of fold of different bad guys kind of piece,
I know exactly what you mean. I have been in interviews where someone actually lived in my neighborhood, and I was like, "Wait, what street was that?" And they were like, "This," and I was like, oh, "Okay, all right, that's not what I expected to hear." But all right, it's interesting to me though that you say that. You talked about when 9/11 happened, and you thought, if you're going to get your gun on, this is the time to do it. But then when I ask you, what's the most rewarding operations for you? You say when they're back here protecting, our own backyard.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting to me to hear that the reconnaissance, that the watching people that are going to do damage here is the most rewarding to you. And I think it's a very cool answer to give, but it seems like it's a little off from what most people would think you would say.
Because it's in your backyard. It's in your 5-meter radius kind of thing, When you're overseas in Afghanistan, it's a whole different, you're on the moon pretty much, and you're dealing with stuff far over there. It doesn't have, that guy will have effects in ripple effects time here.
Of course.
But when you're in your backyard in your home country, it has immediate effects of what you're doing, and that was kind of the key piece. And that's why, to me, it was more fulfilling to take out or to be part of that whole process inside the United States. Love what we did overseas, but I think it had immediate effects back on the Homeland.
All right. Should we talk about Central Africa or you being on the USS Polar next?
Yeah. I'm not sure what people know about the polars. Maybe we should talk about the polars.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you look it up on the internet, there's not a whole bunch about it other than it was commissioned in 2017 and they changed it from USNS to USS, and it kind of goes dark about what they were doing.
It does. Well, we can talk a little about the Polar. The Polar is it is designed for a rotor wing launching pad for special operations kind of piece. And it moves around, and it was originally a civilian vessel, like I said, generally speaking. So it's run, the command is military, but the ship is run by civilians that run the whole ship. But it is designed for launch platforms for rotary wing operations going into different areas around the world.
I also did learn that you can't launch a jet from it because it will melt through the deck. And I guess that was a big question, is whether they could launch the vertical launchers from there. So Also another quick fact about it, it's the first ship to ever be commissioned outside of the United States for military service. So so there was I learned a little bit when you sent me, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. And then I was like, okay, if he forgot about this one, I got to look into how the fuck he was even working on this thing. So
the funny thing about the Polar was that a friend of mine here, never in the military. I give a shit. The first time I met him, we were chatting, and he walks up and he's like, "You ever heard of Chesty Puller?" I go, "Yeah, of course I've heard of Chesty Puller." And he goes, "I can't remember." He's like, "He's my great uncle or something like that, you know." And I was like, "That's pretty cool." I go, "So what have you done?" He goes, well, "I don't do it. I joined the military." I go, "All right then." So when I was by the Puller, I called him up and I sent him a text. Go, "Hey, I'm by the Chesty Puller right now." That's kind of, you know. That was funny. I thought it was funny.
All right. I think we're going to jump ahead. UAE, there's not a lot to talk about there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, let's talk about there. Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Iraq and Syria to kind of wrap up your career, and why it's so interesting to me, because this is your last rotation.
Yeah.
Are you on, I don't want to say cruise control, but you're to the end of your career, and it's a pretty long career so far. I mean, we're getting up there in years. Are you on cruise control and like, okay, I'm going to do this last rotation, I'm going to get out and I'm going to start doing what I need to do? Or are you completely laser focused in on this last one? Because so much went wrong with this last one. I just wonder where your headspace was at going over there and then coming back from there.
I was still laser focused, man. Anything I did, you know, just because of the people under the command and stuff like that, you want to make sure you're always doing a great job no matter what you're doing, kind of piece. So there was a lot of build up going into this and understanding the frustrations around in the area to going into it, have a clear understanding. So it was still there. I wasn't on cruise control because I didn't really, there was understanding that I was probably going to retire, but I wasn't sure if I was going to retire, kind of that point, you know. When you're at CSM level, once you start getting into the general officer level, they're nominated positions, and so there's nothing guaranteed in life. And I always found that kind of interesting, that people understand that when you get certain levels, it isn't necessarily the best person for the job. It is based on windows. So if you're already in a position and you're already at a 2-year commitment in that position, or 3-year, you know, an assignment, and a window opens up that you wanted to get, it's just, you're going to miss it again, put someone else there. Because in their mind is, like I say, a 2-star general, any 2-star general across the board can do that job. You know, that's how their mentality. Any CSM at that level can do that job. And I don't agree with that. I think there's different backgrounds. You know, they go do that. I agree. But you learn that there are windows, you know. The rear admiral I was with, he wanted to take over the Navy Special Warfare, but based on he just came into this command and then it was just about to open halfway through that he probably wasn't going to get it, you know, so he was going to move on to something else, kind of thing, you know. And that's really what it was. And that's kind of, it's your eyes open more and more as you become more command levels, that you realize that it's not about you at all. It's really just about, you know, filling a position in certain windows and then windows opening up. It's not necessarily what you bring to the fight or game. They kind of look at everybody as a general basic level at that point. You can plug and play at that point. And that's kind of disappointing in a way when you learn that.
Well, that's what I was about to say. That's got to be disappointing to you because, you know, everyone says, even in law enforcement, they say, well, if you want to make changes, promote. But we all know it doesn't really make a difference.
True to a point. So I'm gonna fight you a little on this one.
Okay.
So at a certain level, this is true. At a certain level, that I think it's going to be at that beginning general officer level, at 07 level. You're going to start seeing that, you know. But below that piece, I think it's dynamic, and I always push my guys, because the guys are like, I want to stay on the teams, I just want to go do this kind of thing, you know, when running gun. I said, if you don't move forward, or someone good doesn't move forward in leadership positions, then someone bad is going to, and they're going to make bad decisions. And guess what? The ship will get. At least you moving forward can help keep the ship moving in the right direction, whereas someone else can move in a different direction, kind of beast. And unfortunately, like I saw that in that CTOC world, you know, that's not your special operation guys in there. That's all special operations, generally speaking. But unfortunately, it falls in a conventional world. And I saw bad leadership move in, and I saw it pretty much destroy a program because of bad leadership.
Okay. Can I counter that for just a second? When you say that, and you say you always told them strive for this when they told you they want to stay on the teams and everything like that, I look back to your career, and a reason you didn't become an officer was because you wanted to run and gun. You wanted to, just hear me out. You wanted to run and gun. You wanted to stay on the teams. And you did that for the majority of your career. And then I look at law enforcement and they say, well, promote. Okay, you promote. And then you turn to at will and you go wherever they send you. And then they start looking at it at a way lower level than what you're talking about of, well, anybody at this rank can do this job. Anybody can go here. Anybody can go there. It doesn't really make a difference. And so I wonder when you say always try and move and always try and do this, but you had the same thoughts in your career that you wanted to stay in the teams, you wanted to run and gun. So how do you balance that out then?
A lot of my teammates and don't ever tell. So I need you guys to step up, man. Come on.
Got it.
No, but you're absolutely right on that perspective. I truly looked at the NCO world. It's truly the ones that keep the machine running and keep it moving and how it runs kind of piece. And that to me was, and also a part of why I stayed in that realm was to be part of that piece of the machine on that side of the house. But you are right there that, you know, I did that in order to have more longevity on the teams and so forth, that, and not go to the officer level. But now that I'm in leadership, well, I was in leadership levels, I look completely different.
Got it. I got it. We don't have to argue about it anymore. All right, let's talk a little bit about Iraq and Syria. Now, as we were talking at your last rotation, but a lot goes wrong here. An attack on the U.S. Embassy. You have to do an exfil of the U.S. ambassador and all personnel. And there was also an elimination of an Iranian general. There was ballistic missile attacks. When you're looking at it, I know that you said that you were like, well, I might retire, I might not retire. When all of this is happening, do you go, holy shit, this is my last rotation and all this is happening? Because this is a lot to deal with, especially at the level you're at, because you're not just dealing with it at a team level. You're looking at the overall picture and kind of the totality of all the circumstances that are going on.
Yeah. But no, I did. It was again, it was exciting. It was, you know, everything's that. I love it. I love that level of just it is, how am I to say it? I work better in chaos, I guess, in that kind of realm. And everything was coming to chaos, and that's, man, I was comfortable. I'm comfortable in chaos, and I love it. If not, I'm bored, you know? So it was kind of one of the things is that chaos was now erupting, and it was, all right, this time of true leadership, trying to step up and prep for the fight and do what's next step piece. But that was kind of my mentality. But a lot of things, like you said, a lot of things happened unexpectedly. You know, if you look back now, you obviously can look at all the indicators building up to it, you know. But it was a lot of, like, you know, we call it the Quentin Tarantino moments in my career. There are a lot of things like when you watch the Quentin Tarantino movie, like, how did that just happen? Or how did I get here, kind of thing, you know? And there was a lot of moments through that piece, walking through, especially working with the rear admiral, bouncing around with him, kind of thing. You know, him and I we had the same mentality and mindset, and that could get us in trouble at times. You got to have a yin and yang, you know, the kind of case. And sometimes it's both of us on the same. We gotta go. Like, well, you know what? Let's team guys go do this. We shouldn't be doing this right now. Kind of that, you know. But you're absolutely right, though. It was my buddy told me, he goes, "You went out with a bang, huh?" I go, "Yeah, it was pretty good one."
Do you remember at any point, and we're talking about this during the exfil, during any of this kind of stuff, is there a defining, like you just said, a Quentin Tarantino? Was there a defining moment that you play over and over on a loop in your head?
My favorite one was a meeting we had. It was so the PMF. Qatar has blown up PMF. PMF's an umbrella, right? So under PMF is that all different kinds of terrorist organizations, proxy elements fall under kind of piece, right? So we had been getting several things. The U.S. had been several hits, like the drone got shot down. They captured the Navy sailors for a bit. You know, the Iranians did. Iranians shot down one of our drones. A couple ships got hit by a couple of IEDs, or weren't sure if it was IEDs, but there were drones, underwater drones, or they had divers come in and put stuff on the ships kind of thing and put holes in, kind of sink them, but damage them obviously pretty bad. And a couple other things lined up. A lot of bombing of the bases in Iraq and stuff like that, rocket attacks. And we had got pushed into trying to push off Iran, because our focus was defeat ISIS, right? So we're chasing ISIS that time in Iraq and Syria kind of thing. And so I got pulled into a meeting one day. It was very unexpectedly from the rear admiral. He said, "Come down, Sean, we got a meeting, we got to go." You know, we hop in our vehicle, and it's just one vehicle. There's four of us pushing. And it's myself, you know, you have that 07, 08 guy, 06, myself. I got V4, who's our linguist. And now we're pushing to this meeting, and no one knows we're going off. So we're taking off, you know, in semi-permissive by Baghdad, and have this meeting. And last minute meeting, roll into the compound. You know, it's the standard compound in Baghdad, Iraq. You know, gates, AK-47s roll in. We kit kind of stuff in, and we don't have sidearms. We go into this meeting, and it's kind of you're trying to remember everything about the meeting, you know. And it was the key thing about it was that when you walk in, a big giant U-shaped couches. You see this all the time in a lot of the Middle Eastern their meeting areas and stuff like that. Giant U-shaped couches and stuff. And you walk in, it's just smoky, and you can tell the guys have been drinking. And in the room is just a mixture of just probably, you know, you have Syrians, Egyptians, probably some Iranians are in there, Iraqis are in there, probably some Syrians, a mixed crew of Middle Eastern people in there hanging out kind of thing. And we sat down, and the point of the meeting was to talk to the Iranians, to the proxy element there, to bring back the information back to Iran and say, hey, knock it off. We're focused on, you know, defeating ISIS, you know, so cut off with the shit, you know. And the meeting, you know, at certain points, it goes, it's escalating up and down. You can tell they're getting more heightened, you know, going back, because they've been drinking, they're smoking, and we're sitting there. And I'm looking around the room, kind of going, it's a Quentin Tarantino moment. We're sitting here randomly. And I do simply remember on the right-hand pole is that, you know, I'm at the very end of the couch, the armrest, that at points you're pushing off, and you're like, all right, I got to have room to draw here, because this is going to get hostile. So who are we going to shoot first, kind of thing, you know, because more than likely, no one's making it out of this room. So, but at least you want to take down the key guy. Who's the key guy, kind of thing, you know? But it elevated up and down, and we left there, you know. When we left, we kind of felt like, okay, our message got through, you know. And it was and then we come to find out a little later, it did go through. Okay,
well, it seems so weird. They were smoking and drinking that your message didn't get taken in. Yeah, that seems so weird that didn't work out. All right, so I want to point out before we get off your career, 300 operations. You and I talked about this, and I want to point this out. You said I could take it out, but I really want it known. 300 operations resulting in the killing or capturing of over 270 ISIS leaders.
Yeah, across the board. That was with coalition forces and all that kind of stuff too, rolling through special operations in the Iraq Syria piece, all that. Yeah.
It's amazing though to look at that, and to go back to kind of the question that we talked about, that never ending list, 270 over your career with coalition forces and everything. Not to say that there wasn't even more stuff going on with more people.
That was just my last trip.
You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. When we talk about that never ending list, I thought that meant your whole.
No.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that makes it even more impressive. So I don't know why you called me and said, you can take that out if you want. That's bullshit that you called me and told me that. All right. So let's move to you getting out of the military. You retiring. Now, the biggest thing to me, because I think you have a completely different personality now than you had, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but you just told me 10 minutes ago, I live in chaos. I loved chaos. I work best in it. Well, you get out, you run to be mayor, you want to be a dad, you want to stay married, you surf a lot, you're making your mezcal, you work at the bar. I don't know if that's chaos. I don't know. I don't really equate the chaos that you saw during your career to that being that strong chaos. I know it's a completely different kind,
Yeah.
but do you think that you're still thriving in chaos, or do you think you're thriving in having a mission in front of you?
I think it's thriving having a mission in front of me now, and but there is a little bit of chaos when you're working, like developing a Mezcal brand and do all that stuff you're doing, especially because you're dealing with down in Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico. It's not like I'm going to Kentucky bourbon kind of piece. You're dealing with two different countries kind of thing. So there is a little bit of chaos to it, but it's more now controlled chaos, and it's not like the chaos that I've known in the past. It's like, hey, if it didn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. It'll happen tomorrow, happen the next day kind of piece. So you're kind of still developing that piece on there. But you're right, though, is having to focus on the mission and finding out. It really is. Again, we mentioned earlier, it's about expectation management. It's understanding that as soon as you can learn that piece when you come out, then as long as you are one with that, then I think you are more grounded at that point too. Because the people you work with out here are just completely different, and people ask, why don't you hang out with team guys? I think it's the team guys hang out with each other, when we're doing rotations and pushes, all that kind of stuff. But I have one of my old teammates, one of my best friends, a retired sergeant major too, lives a mile and a half from me. I see him like once a month, because you're not in those same situations. You can only have so many, I guess, triple A alpha mentality people around you. You kind of have to create your own village kind of thing, and that's kind of what happens when you retire. But to me, anyways, but I do have to do a lot of expectation management. I don't expect certain levels of most people I know these days.
How long did it take you to get that mentality? Because I know it did not start day one.
No, it didn't. But you have to understand is, so when I came back, so during all the embassy stuff, Somalia, ballistic missiles, all that stuff, I came back and went on leave. My leave ended on 14 March 2020. That's the day COVID hit. So my leave ended, right?
So then it technically didn't end.
It didn't end. But the weird part was, so I was getting ready to go into my medical title, my medical portion, all that kind of stuff, which the COVID thing helped me because it helped me get through a lot of the process really quick, medical wise. I get MRIs, X-rays, some things it takes you, a week to get done. I was getting it in a day, bam, 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 down at SOCOM, and so it was easy to roll through that. But the hard part about that for me was I came from this world of isolation, and when I come home, I expected if I want to go to Starbucks get a coffee, I get a Starbucks coffee kind of thing and move around. Now I'm rolling into another world of isolation again that you can't punch out, you can't do that, even with your family and all that kind of stuff. It's still, you feel isolated. Now it's like I can't move. I come home, move, but I'm not moving kind of case.
Okay, so how do you deal with that then? Because we've talked this entire conversation about living in chaos, having a mission. I can't even imagine coming home. Vacation is one thing, leave is one thing. When all that's over, though, and COVID hits and you can't do shit, it has got to drive you bananas.
That's regular. Yeah. And you sit around and it does. It drives you nuts, and you're just trying to find, different things to do. And it's all about looking for work, being busy, kind of being, and so it was difficult, the transition. And I didn't really see it as much. I really think that I'm in a much better place now. So 3 years later, but it definitely takes a while. And at first I didn't really accept and acknowledge it to get to where I am now, to be grounded, where I'm at. I mean, I got to a point where when I saw rough waters, oceans, because when I was younger, man, anytime it was rough surf, big surf, it was a challenge, man. Get out there to surf, and paddle out and be able to ride that kind of stuff and get beat up. When I got back in that time period, when I saw rough surf, it was weird. It got me panicky. It got me in a weird spot that I wouldn't go out and go do it when I was younger. Whether that's when I'm getting older and wiser, or it was just I don't know. I still to this day, I don't have a clear understanding of what that time period. Maybe it was that transition of coming off of what we did to now And that's a hard thing mentally, man. It's just, man, you're in the know all the time, and your life is suddenly shifting gears to you had folks at Mission 31 years, and now you're just trying to figure out what's next kind of piece. And it was a little bit,
So do you think, and I guess the question would be, when you say, as a kid, when you saw the surf, you wanted to get out to it. Then you're transitioning, you see the surf, and it makes you a little unnerved. Do you think there's any part of that in your brain that goes, man, I just survived 30 years of that. I'm not going to risk it to go out and do this and go out that way. Does that make any sense?
Yes and no. So you take in a bit of that, but at the same time, you go, no, you don't let that fear, you don't let that, put you down, and so, and I understand what you're saying by that. So getting out there and risking your life too much at that point, and something like how does Sean Sean got knocked out by a surfboard, he drowns kind of thing,
Yeah.
That's not the mentality. You can't think of those scenarios. It's like, you just go do it. And so that was the point. I'm going to go in the water because I'm not going to let this beat me kind of piece. So I would go out, and I get pummeled. I make it out and be out in the water, even though I kind of raised my stress levels a little bit. But I didn't want to get to a point where in my life that I did not want to be able to face that and step down. I just didn't want to be that way. And I think I'm better now. Now I focus more on the sun and stuff like that. But at that time period, I didn't want to do that. And I completely understand what you're saying about this. But it was like, there's a mentality in me, and it's, I think maybe a lot of the guys, is that that's not going to beat me. I've beaten all this. That's not going to beat me.
Well, then I guess the question would be, because when I hear you say that I guess I'm not understanding then when you looked out at the rough water and saw that and it unnerved you. I guess I'm not getting the mentality you were at then.
So it put me in I guess the chaos of the water somehow put me in a little more of a stressful, panicky motion, and I didn't want to go out then. And something was holding me back, like a fear was holding me back getting in that water kind of place, the stress of it, kind of the panic of it, of being in, like, we call it survival at sea and big surf like that, but I wasn't going to let that fear stop me from getting in that, and I didn't want it to overtake me. And I was like,
so that there was no point that it ever did stop you from getting in. When that happened, you were like, fuck it, I'm doing it.
Yeah, get out of the water. But now, now I do. I'm a little more of a fair weather sailor now. I prefer better waters, better seas when I surf. I go out. I go, but that I maybe I've finally matured. I'm 53 years old. I'm finally matured to making better decisions. When I go out there and I go, it's not worth today. I'm going out and doing that crap, slop everywhere in the ocean, and it's like 10 to 12 foot, but it's just complete slop out there, So now I've at 53 now, I go, not worth today, But a year ago, 2 years ago, when I got out, I was like, no, you're not that, But it definitely has changed.
I want to talk about one other decision that you made when you got out, and I got to just understand the mentality behind this one. You decided, I'm going to get out of 30 years of chaos, and I'm going to be the mayor of this town. And as much as you and I have talked on the phone and stuff, I'm not seeing it. I don't get it. Why would you want to be in the spot like that?
I made a drink when I made that decision.
So let me get this right. That was at the time you were drinking a lot more.
I remember that too. But actually, that came to it came to a hard point in my marriage, actually, in the last month of that whole thing. Because I keep telling people I'm retired, to be around my family, at the same time. But then I ran for mayor, and that really kind of took me away from my family. The focus was back on me again, not the family kind of piece, And there was a lot of anger being built up inside the household here. But the reason I ran too is being part of the community. And how I looked at it was, I'm here to protect my son, to teach, to nurture and love my son, right? And as I got more involved with, I'm funny now, the PTA, Student Advisory Council, and all the stuff in there, it kind of involves you more around your child and doing, the love, protect, nurture, and teach. And then I came to the reality, as time expanded, it is everybody in that school in my neighborhood. See, my neighborhood's fantastic out here. The beaches, they really look after each other and move around. It is everybody in the community that looks after my child, that teaches and nurtures my child and so forth. And as that grew, the mayor position was coming open, and what a better position to help develop that would be the mayor position inside of some beach town kind of piece, And the mayor was leaving, so it was an empty hole at that point. So I was like, well, it was an empty hole. It's not a selfish move at that point. That's why I kind of pursued that. And I had a lot of people out there say, Sean, you should run for mayor kind of thing. But the last month leading up to the end of the campaign is that it was very chaotic in my house and very chaotic, fighting the campaign. And so I came to the realization that my family is more important than that campaign mayor piece. So I never left the mayoral campaign, but I talked to, it's a nonpartisan voting here, mayor, but it's definitely heavy left and right. There was 3 of us running at the time. And then the one that was more in my values, my lane, him and I were friends through the whole thing, chatting. I would talk to him and say, listen, I'm not telling you I'm leaving the campaign, but what I'm telling you is that any signs that are the third person in their yards, I'll go after that house to get them to switch either to my side or your side and go after that piece. And that's what I did. So I kind of left the campaign, but stayed at the same time. So it was a decision I had to make, and it's unfortunate. It was I almost kind of felt like I was quitting. A lot of people believed in me, and a lot of funding came in to help out and develop the campaign. But it was the final decision I had to come down to. It wasn't about me anymore, and it was truly about us.
Was it a mistake?
No, because
no, I mean running for mayor. Was it a mistake?
No, I see what you're saying, but let me tell you right now, I've got to meet this community, everybody in this community. Everybody knows who I am, just from my hair and all that kind of stuff. Because when people see me on the flyer, they have me and my long hair and all that stuff. And then at the back was a picture of me and my blues and my wife with short hair, and they're like, that's the same guy, kind of thing like that. So it was a community got to know me and understand who I was. And I got to know the huge part of the community. People walk up to me all the time, goes, man, I voted for you, and I love what you did and stuff like that. So it was a good way to meet the community. If I wanted to pursue this again later on, which I probably won't, my world switched over to something different, the Mezcal world. But I learned a lot in that time period, and I got to meet so many people in the community. And that's one positive thing that really came out of it,
Do you think there'll ever be a perfect balance in your life? Because we talked about running for mayor, and that was, I'm not going to say it was a selfish decision. That's what you said was maybe a selfish decision. But I look at now, you're starting a Mezcal company, and it's a lot of work. Is there ever going to be that balance, or are you constantly, I don't want to say looking for that next high, because I don't think that's what it is anymore, but it's definitely a next accomplishment.
I think that's what it is, and when I retired, I didn't chase contracts. I didn't chase any of that stuff. I didn't want to. I stayed here and my wife focused. So I became Mr. Mom, except the mayor stuff, Mr. Mom kind of thing. Now it's just and the wife was doing her stuff, work wife. But the Mezcal, so that was that piece. So, but it's always looking for something passionate to do, and finding something that's going to draw your passion towards it. I don't think there's any time that I'm going to be able to just sit down. I'm learning golf. I enjoy playing a little bit of golf here and there, but I play like once a month, that's all I play. But I do other things, and it's also moving forward. The Mezcal, to me, once it is, I wouldn't say it's chaotic, but the family's behind it, right behind me, 100% behind me, kind of this one, and it was a good conversation because she's heavy in the social media world, so she's helping me build my social media side and develop all that kind of piece too, so she's really good with that, and she's a great writer, and she's really focused on that too, to become the family business. So the key thing was to be able to do something that the family could all be part of, and I think this is where Mezcal is going to be. And what really drew me to the Mezcal too is at first when I tasted it, I was it's a rough drink at first, you know, you gotta have the palate for it. And as I drank it more and more, my palate matured. I think, you know, it could be that some, but you know, when you a good mezcal, you realize like a good scotch and a good bourbon, a good Irish whiskeys, you know, you taste that mezcal and it drives to you. And what really drove me to was that, man, in this world, so I've found out everybody's about trying convenience, skipping steps and doing all that kind of stuff. I always tell people, you know, never cut corners. I'll give you a quick example of cutting a corner. And this is why I stick to never cutting corners. Iraq 0607, the base command sergeant major, 82nd Airborne. You know, they're taking a route coming back in the gate, fourth vehicle in the convoy coming into the gate. Their driver, it's you know, stay on the hard roads, come in, you know, it's a hard right coming in, you know, it's L-shaped coming in. That driver that day, he cut it short. Went off the freaking the concrete, back tire hit, a triple stack, tank, annihilated that vehicle, and that command sergeant major. My guys went in and got him out because they didn't want their guys getting their command sergeant major out. That guy was white as a ghost because he melted and pulled him out. They cut a corner. Never cut corners on a piece, you know. And so when I go down there and see this mezcal thing, it's something to do with that, but they don't cut corners. Everything they do is generation by generation by generation. They stick to the standards all the time. And I love that about that mezcal, you know, and that really drew me to it more and more and more every time going down. And that's kind of why I kind of built that piece there.
Well, and I love the quote that you have of one lion is greater than 100 sheep. And I understand how you used it in your life. I'm starting to understand how you do it with mezcal, but the more and more that you and I talk, the more and more I understand that with you, it's standards, it's rigidity, and it's accomplishing something every single time. There's no just going and doing something. There's no just going surfing. There's no just, it's always accomplishing or defeating something. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And I'll give you one thing too about the lion piece. And you know, personal part of my life. My son is born through IVF. We went through IVF, and it's a weird thing. There's a lot of IVF babies in special operations. You know, I'm not sure why, but there is. So our son's IVF. My wife produced one egg. Normally IVF, you don't go into, you have like 5 eggs. And when we went in, that doctor asked us, because, you know, pretty pricey. Military ain't paying for IVFs, they're paying for sex changes kind of thing, you know. We're not paying for IVFs. Yeah. Well, for training warriors, you know. That's another thing, how we go later on in life. But doctor goes, he goes, what do you want to do? There's only one egg. I go, hey, one lion is greater than 100 sheep. And he goes, all right, let's go with it. And you got a perfect son. But, you know, and it's just always sticking to that, you know, that line. The line so often is hidden in, you know, can be hidden in sheep's clothing because that's part of the jobs we do in life, you know. But the line is still there. You want that line, you know. As Beckworth said, hey, I'd rather take 7 studs downriver than 100 shitheads. Same idea, same concept.
Yeah. Is it, I don't want to say is it worth it because I know that it's worth it to you. Is it everything that you thought it would be?
Nice.
And what I mean, no, not your son. I know. No.
Yes.
No, that's not what I was asking. Is this life after that world of chaos for 30 years, is it everything you thought it was going to be? And we've talked about meeting expectations and managing expectations. Is this the thought, the vision, the picture, whatever you want to call it, that you had after you left the military?
Hey, man, empty canvas. Paint that canvas as you go through. You know, and that's pretty much what I'm doing now, painting that canvas. So the next mission right now is the mezcal and all that kind of stuff. It's finding that other thing. Is it? I can't say it is or isn't, man, because even the things that I end up in life, you know, I never necessarily expected to be there kind of piece. So is my life good and happy? Yeah. I mean, I have happy lives, you know, and my wife, I love the beaches and do, you know, I'm getting better at not saying yes to everything. People are asking me to do things, and I'm getting better going, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm chilling out here. I'm never chilling, you know, it's working on the house, I'm surfing, I'm working out, or I'm working on my mezcal, I'm doing something with my son. my focus is my son, riding bikes in the morning, drop him off to school and pick him up. Once he comes home, my life focus is completely him, and helping him and surviving and homework and whatever we're doing, being a part of his life. So I think it's what I thought it would be was, man, I didn't know what it was going to be, am I happy where it is? Yeah, I'm pretty happy where it is, I'm happy in the relationships I've built in my life and the people I know, and surround yourself with good people. And that's the key thing, quality draws quality. And I think I've done a pretty good job of maintaining the relationships of good people around me.
All right, we got 2 more questions. Well, I guess a question and then my idea. Here's my idea for you. Since the mayor thing didn't work out, okay? Here's my idea. You get a U-shaped couch, okay?
Okay.
You become the leader of the PTA, and then you have your PTA meetings on that U-shaped couch. I'm not saying that you should drink and smoke while those PTA meetings are going on, but it seemed to work out well for some people.
Have you been to a PTA meeting? You want to drink?
Okay, we can take the PTA out. How about homeowners association? We could do that. I just want to see you on another U-shaped couch having a meeting.
So that's the funny thing about with the PTA and the Student Advisory Council, and I'm part of other things in the city. I'm 1 degree off of making decisions. That's what I want to be. I don't want to be the guy who has to make decisions. I will carry whatever you want. I will do whatever you need to do. I'm not making decisions. Because it's one thing, because you're held to it, right? I'm like, nah, man, if I want to take off, I guess, hey, man, we're taking off to Puerto Rico for a week to go surfing with the family. I don't want to be held that I have to be the PTA president.
Here's my bet. Next 5 years, $100 you're in on it. That's my bet right now. $100 in the next 5 years, you're in on making decisions.
I got to find a good U-shaped couch.
You know how hard that's going to be to find a U-shaped couch? And it's got to be large.
I think extremely large, exactly.
All right, so what's next, man?
It's the Mezcal, man. We've been working on the fundraiser right now, building the label, and it's been fun to me because it's all about a learning process. But you're taking all your planning, what you've done in life, and being able to enable that immerse that into the whole piece of the Mezcal world. But like I said, in about 30 days, I'm going to be down in Mexico for 30 days in Oaxaca. And I truly believe if you're going to be, especially with my name on it, I want to be part of it, and it's going to be part of me, that I want to be down there and understand. So I'm going to live down there for a month with the mescalero and the farmers, and I'm going to do the harvesting of the agaves and work the whole distillation process the whole time for 30 days in there, and understand the whole process and how it works and live with that kind of thing, and that's key to me, man. It's just like, I'm not George Clooney, and I ain't got billions of dollars. You just write it off, name on kind of thing. I truly believe I want to create something to me. And that goes back to, I guess, my life is that my name's on it. There's 2 things you got in special operations. You got your name, reputation. And those 2 things will always follow you in life. And so this bottle is going to have my name on it and my reputation kind of piece, So I want it to be the best mezcal there is, and I'm not looking to sell it. I'm not looking to be $1 million business. It's just something that I want to create that I think is a good thing. And that's why I'm part of it. And so I'm kind of working that way.
Well, here's your time. Let's talk about it. Tell the people why they should drink yours. I'm going to tell you. You walked me into this, and I'm going to get better at it. I promise you I'll get better. Between me and you, I'll get better at it. Why Mezcal, what you're doing with it, and why this brand is so different from the other ones.
So here was the key thing that I got in. So if you look behind me, I've got a lot of bourbons and whiskeys, and I like bourbons and whiskeys and all that. But I looked at longevity. I had at the time, I retired 6 years. Now, Keane was 6 years old, 9 years old now. Is that I need to focus on how do I keep up with him as I get older. He is still, going towards his peak, and I'm on the down side of mine. How do I maintain that? I've earned in my career, my life, like most of us, to be able to sit down, no matter what, and enjoy a premium drink, without taking 4 steps backwards. So it comes down to gut health. the Mezcal is one of the best liquors out there for gut health. You know, it's liquor, it's still a liquor. You know, it still has its downsides, and not about it, man. But when it comes down to the gut health side, that's what I focus on. So I was drinking tequilas that I found Mezcal. So what is this smoky drink? I really started drinking in the old fashions, Mezcal old fashioned and the Mezcal margaritas. And then I dove into just drinking it neat. Now, there are many mezcals out there I will not drink because they're different agave plants that I think they taste terrible. Put in burnt tires. So you have to find that right one for you. And it's true. It's true. But like the SPDs, the Togola, and the Ensembles, you know, to me, they're a good quality premium drink. And I just really enjoy the smokiness of it, kind of the purity of it, you know. And it's 100% natural. There's no additive. There's nothing into it. You know, and that's what also drove me towards the piece. The tequila is getting better again, but tequilas, what they've been doing, they've been cutting them early to mature the plants. So plant matures in 7 to 10 years, and been cutting it 4 or 5 years, you know, and then they induce chemicals to it, and they diffuse it, infusers and all that stuff, and they're looking for quantity, right? I'm looking for quality. I'm doing small batch stuff, it's quality stuff, and that's the key thing. Is I don't want it to take over my life. It's just going to be a part of my life, you know. And why it's the best in the world? Because I said it's the best in the world. But the mescalero I'm working with there that I've been introduced to, and I've went down there several times now, and that's a key thing like we did in life is you, again, go back to building relationships, right? And you're building rapport, you know, and I've already been down there, and the mescalero, from what I am told, the producer said, he invited me to come down. I said, hey, if you want to be part of this and you really want to have a mezcal brand, then you should come and stay with me and be part of the whole process. And the producer says he has never, ever offered that to anybody ever, especially a gringo before, you know. And I said, how could I not do this in this content, you know? So I said, yep, let's plan some dates. I'll come down, you know. And we started 8 months ago building the brand, building the label, and still finishing on the label and developing websites and all that kind of stuff. I just pretty much me and my wife doing it, you know. And now we're doing the fundraiser and all that stuff and building this product out. And now I'm about to go down and get in the ground and do our first bottling, and I'll be there squeezing the first juice. And I thought, to me, I think that was pretty cool.
All right, where can people find it? When will it be available? Because I know it's not available yet. How will they be able to purchase?
So it's going to come out roughly in February, March 25. That's when the bottles will be here. Kind of, you know, I've got the saying, you know, amateur stock, tactics, special stock, logistics, I mentioned earlier. So logistic piece is all covered kind of piece. How we're getting it to Laredo, Texas, and pushover kind of piece. So I've got that covered through some friends of mine that are in that wholesale distributors, getting it here to Jacksonville, Florida area. So we'll get it there, and then we're going to go to the website and we're going to build it. So right now it's literally still, it's a work in progress. So I'm working through different offsite and onsite locations, mainly offsite, like being like liquor stores. But the biggest thing for me is I wanted to create an online store, and that's what we're working at right now. So people can go online and order from online and push it out from there. And we're going to have 3 different ones. Like I said, it's going to be the SPD is kind of like it's the kind of the gateway mezcal to get into mezcals. It's kind of a lighter mezcal, but it's very good. And then you have a Tobler, which tie in, and an Ensemble, which is a mixture of 2 different agave plants. So we're going to have those 3 in there.
I think I had the one that kicks you in the balls right when you drink it. It was, you know, I called you after I did it, and I'm like, yeah, I did it. The whole thing about it is what I liked about it was that it I don't know how to describe it. It stays with you after you drink it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, not like in a burping way.
But what I like about it is that you know that you drink it. That's what I like about bourbons, about scotches and stuff. I want to taste what I'm supposed to taste with it, and that's what I liked about the mezcal.
And the mezcal to me is that it's not for shooting, for sipping kind of thing. It's like a bourbon. You're sipping it neat. Is every time you're drinking it, you're picking up more of that flavor that's coming, because it's a open fermentation. So the area it's done in is there's no industry out there, so it's all open fermentation from the bat to bees and everything kind of thing out there, the honey in the area, all that stuff. So all open fermentation. So you start picking up that taste of the whole thing, you know, which is what I like about it too. And but I tell you right now, if you haven't had a mezcal, if you like old fashions, which I love bourbon old fashioned, double trace. If you haven't a good mezcal old fashioned, that will shift you over. So on the website, we go through the whole recipe that I make here.
Yeah, you do. Let's talk about that right now. I'm glad that you brought that up. Let's talk about where people can find you, find out more about the Mezcal, about where they can get in touch with you and get in touch with the company once that it's in full operation.
Yep. So okanagave.com. That's the main website from there. And from there you can link to the Instagram, the Facebook. I'm literally on the Facebook and Instagram. It is, the people follow me because that's what I wanted to do, was create a kind of a buzz before the product even existed. So you're literally watching me go through all the BS that I'm going through, building labels up, working down south, doing all that kind of stuff, how to build a Mezcal brand, going through all that. And so you're finding out, what works and what doesn't work, So I'm trying different things on Instagram, and I haven't been a social media person. It's my wife. So I'm learning all things on Instagram, how to do reels and posts and all that kind of thing. Because that really, in this day and age in business, you really got to have a social media presence. That's kind of pieces, as you know.
Well, yeah, and let's talk even more about the recipes that you do on there. You do short videos showing people exactly how they can do it. And what's great about it is you talk about other people's Mezcal and how they can use it. You sent me a bunch of them to, hey, try this one, mix it into this. So that's what's really great about it. So if people want to find out how to make those drinks instead of just, shooting it, because you definitely don't want to shoot it, but if they don't want to sip it, if they want to put it into a drink, they can definitely go check you out on there. Let's go over all the names that they can find you under LinkedIn, Instagram, and I don't think you're on Facebook, are you?
Yeah, I'm Facebook, yeah.
Okay, so let's do those then.
Yeah. Facebook is at Okanaga, so on Facebook, so you can look that up. It's pretty simple there. And Instagram is at Okanaga. I'm at LinkedIn on my name, Sean Keane, on that piece there, so you can touch me in there too, and then obviously the website at that point, any of those points you can reach me, and then, obviously if you have a message, you can go to those and send me a direct message at any of those pieces there, and that'll go right to me. Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that you came on here. I'm glad that we got this done, man. There's such a career to go over. I mean, we went a long time on this one, and I think we've just barely scratched the surface on stuff that we can talk about. But I'm so happy. I'm so honored that you came on here to talk to me. Guys, you know where you can find Sean. Let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD Podcast, and you can find me on YouTube at the DTD Podcast. That's where everything is in video form. But if you want a one-stop shop, it's dtdpodcast.net. That's where you're going to find everything. Audio, video. Sean's going to have his own page. He's going to have pictures that he sent me, and there's some badass pictures that he sent me, so you can look a little more into his career. All the links will be on there where you can find him, and possibly whenever we get to February, March time frame, and the bottles come out, we can put a link in there so you can go directly from his episode into where you can purchase the liquor bottles. Guys, thank you so much for coming here. Remember what I tell you every week. Be a friend, tell a friend. If you like what we're doing and you like hearing these stories, share, like, subscribe. Do all of those things that you know you're supposed to do. Make sure, though, that you go to dtdpodcast.net. That's going to tell you everything that we're doing and everything that's upcoming for us. Make sure you check out our sponsors, the guys that make this possible. TridentCoffee.com, MaxBelts.com, and HatchetBrewing.com. Make sure you go to Trident Coffee, and when you do, DTD 15 will get you 15% off your order. Max Belts, they're the toughest leather belts on earth, and we're building this with Hatchet. We got some big things coming with them about buying swag from them, so make sure you check them out. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. That's Sean. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.